Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, and welcome to our April 24th, 2018 meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen. It's coming on to spring. I've given to understand that the first apricot tree will be flowering at Honey Pot in the next few days, which is a good sign. And let me address something that I know is on everyone's mind. Yes, I will be riding in the Best Buddies tournament again, Best Buddies ride with my daughter on June 2nd. I just bought a bike from Assabet River Bike, saw Chris Spear there. Assabet River, they're having a ladies' ride this Saturday morning. And I will, I don't know if Mr. Salvy's going to be doing that again.
I will.
Mr. Salvy will be doing 100 miles. My wife signed me up for 50 miles this year, and that's an enormous feat compared to Mr. Salvy, who does 100 miles every single day. Oh, yes, thank you. But that was just kind of an introduction. Let me now ask for public input from anyone here on a matter which is not on the agenda. Seeing none, let me get to the bulk of my chair's comments. First, some announcements. There is, thanks to the work of our town administrator and the highway department, going to be a brush drop-off offered by the highway department. There's a lot of limbs and tree parts that have littered everyone's property because of the storm a while back, and therefore Stow is going to make available their brush cutter or their chipper at the highway department, 88 South Acton Road, from May 2nd through May 12th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is a chance for you not to throw those old tree limbs into the street, but to bring them to the Stow Highway Department where they may be disposed of properly. Do I have that right, Mr. Town Administrator?
As always, I would imagine it's probably just Monday through Friday, I would imagine.
That does make sense, but is that your understanding, Mr. Town Administrator?
Only when they're open.
Only when they're open,
How
including
do you
every
get through that
week.
closed gate?
Oh, okay, every week.
Code.
No, it says including weekends.
Is it?
Yeah, every day, including weekends. Although you may want to check before you go down on a Sunday with a whole truck full of tree parts.
There's information on the website.
Thank you, Madam Town Clerk. The Stow Candidates Night will be this Monday, April 30th, at the Stow Town Hall at 7:30 p.m. Hope everyone will be interested enough to support the civic engagement in our election. There is, of course, going to be a Stow Town cleanup scheduled for April 28th, 2018. I think we've already covered that in previous meetings, but it's a chance for people in Stow to get out and clean up Stow this Saturday morning. And because of the construction that we keep understanding is going to commence down in Lower Village, we've...
Don't look at me.
All right, never mind. I'm not trying to, I'm just looking for information, not assigning blame, Mr. Town Administrator, but we will have, I think this will be kicked off in the parking lot. Am I correct?
At Stow Plaza.
At, at Stow Plaza.
Right. Last I heard.
Okay, so it'll be at the parking lot. And I thank our town administrator for working that all out. There's going to be a meeting, I understand, on May 2nd. It's actually a public hearing regarding the moratorium that's on the town warrant for this annual town meeting, the moratorium for the marijuana regulations. Again, we're not deciding whether or not we're going to, at this town meeting, whether or not we're going to allow marijuana recreational sales in this community or all the other ancillary purposes that have been authorized by by statewide referendum. We're just going to be asking for another month or so that we can get our ducks in order before the special town meeting, which will be sometime in the fall. The Community Preservation Committee will be having a public hearing on May 21st at 7:45 PM here, and it will be about the plan that I think that, it'll be a plan to assess the needs, possibilities, and resources of the town in areas of historic preservation, open space and recreation, and affordable housing. Is that correct, Mr. Barrow? Oh, okay, well, all right.
Look at me, I'll say I don't know what
Thought you might know, sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. One last agenda item before we begin with the more solemn and substantive part of our Chair's comments. The Cemetery Department will be holding a meeting informing the residents of Stow about green burials on May 2nd. That's Wednesday, May 2nd, at 12:30 PM. I'm not sure if it's going to be at the Old Town Hall or it's going to be at their new digs at the old fire station.
Has to
But-
be at the town hall.
Oh, yes, I didn't, pardon?
At the town hall.
At the town hall. So I don't know what green burials are, but those who are interested, please,
I could tell you.
well.
Not now.
Okay. Now, we
I want to
have,
spoil GH's fun.
he seems to believe that there is a lot of interest in green burials, and for those of you who are interested, I encourage you to attend. Now we have, as I said, two more substantive parts of our Chair's comments. The first is rather solemn, but I'm going to turn over my time at this point to Mr. Ryan to read something that we think is worth telling the town.
Yeah. As I'm sure you all know, less than 2 weeks ago, Sergeant Sean Gannon of the Yarmouth Police Department was killed in the line of duty. Well, it's always sad when someone is killed by another. It's even worse when a police officer who is protecting the town is killed doing his job. Sergeant Gannon and police across the country put their lives on the line to protect us all every day, and he will be missed by all of us. I'd like to request a moment of silence in remembrance of Sergeant Gannon and all the police officers who have given their lives over the years to protect us.
Seeing no opposition, we will take that moment of silence.
As a follow-on to that, in the last 7 years, I've interviewed many prospective police officers and have been part of the hiring process for all of the police officers in the town of Stow. I can say without a doubt that we have a great group of men and women on our police department who go out every day willing to protect us from those who would do us harm or harm themselves, putting their own lives at risk. The next time you see one of our officers of the Stow PD, please thank them for their service.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, and worthwhile noting that it was a solemn and tragic occurrence. We now have the opportunity to move on to a little happier and more festive matters. We have, and it's not really in the area of Chair's comments, but we have some younger residents of Stow who would like to come forward and share a special program that they've been doing on Stow TV. Ladies, would you like to come to the table and introduce yourselves to the members of the board and your fellow residents in Stow?
So we have started a show called Better Batter Baking.
Why don't you have a seat? That way we can get you on the Stow TV. Yes, bring that forward. And
This is my chair.
thank you for coming tonight. What are your names?
I'm Carlin.
Carlin,
Kreischer. I'm Nikki.
Ryan Burke.
I'm Carly Keaton.
I see. Thank you for coming to share what you're doing with us.
Especially the cupcakes.
You are leaving those, right?
They're leaving them with me. Please continue.
Okay, so this is our second episode that we have been filming today. And so the last one was filmed last week. And that one was cookies, and it will be showing on the Stow TV program. And this one is cupcakes. So we have just finished filming that now, and we have some cupcakes for people to try.
As I understand it, you're filming these in the kitchen downstairs in the basement of this building,
Yes.
and Stow TV is broadcasting those. I don't know if they're broadcasting them live, but the shows will be available on Stow TV YouTube. So,
Yes.
so anyone who wants to see good baking, you can tune in anytime.
It's not always good, though.
Sometimes it's very messy.
That gives us hope. We're all messy.
Yes. Well, so Nikki and I are always on the show.
And then we have a special guest star every episode. So Carly is our special guest star this week.
Our first episode, however, does not have an extra special guest, but the rest of them probably will. So.
I might suggest a special guest at another time, but thank you very much for coming, and thank you for sharing us the fruits of your baking. Is there are any questions and comments from my colleagues on the board?
I'm curious how you wound up doing this. Did you just think of it on your own? Did a teacher suggest it, or?
So,
It's a great idea.
basically, they were kind of, Stow TV was kind of, I guess, running out of ideas on what to put on, I guess. So,
So there was an opportunity.
yeah, pretty much.
It wasn't that you were tired of your mother's cupcakes.
No.
You don't want to say that.
Yeah, well, so they asked us if we'd be interested in doing a program, and we decided it might be a fun thing to do in our free time, so we came up with a baking show.
And what's the name of the program again?
Better Batter Baking.
Ah, okay, thank you.
That's
I just want to add that not only do they star and organize it, they also do all the editing at the end. They put it together, they cut it, they put in their own titles. Pretty hands-off for us, and it's all they're doing. They do a really great job.
So they just present you with a finished tape?
I'm sorry?
They just present you with a finished tape?
No. We film it, but we give them, it's
Yeah.
very rough. It starts like at an hour and a half, and it gets whittled down to about a half an hour.
Yeah.
But they do all that work themselves. I just showed them last week how to do it, and they just took off. And it's really impressive.
That's great.
Thank you, Jonathan, and for the record, and for the people at home, that's Jonathan Daisy, going to be our new executive director of LACAC Stow TV. Anything else you'd like to share with us, ladies?
The cupcakes.
Would you please be so kind as to give the town administrator a cupcake?
What do you think about seeing yourself on TV?
You can go.
I mean, it's something that I never completely thought that would happen. Like, it's never something I really hoped I would do forever.
One of each.
But, I mean, it's something I ended up doing, and I'm glad I did, because it's very interesting.
You have a napkin?
Any other questions?
Have you gotten used to when you see yourself saying, "Why is my left hand going up when I was using my right"? It's
Yeah.
a little disconcerting when you first see that.
Anyone else like the cupcakes?
Sure, I'll take that for later. Thank you.
My office is right down the hall. And during the day, I don't see anything.
Lots of people come to talk to us every 2 weeks, and nobody ever brings snacks. This is a great idea.
No, all the years I've been on the board, this
Yeah.
is the first time anyone has ever done this for us.
We're not asking for money.
I thought your colleagues would be, my colleagues would be
They
pleased.
can pass them down. We gotta put it on plates.
And thank you, Jonathan, for thinking of bringing this to
Thank
our
you for your time.
attention. I don't think I've seen my colleagues more happy spending time in any other way.
Yeah.
Here, anyone like to?
They'll just sit at that right
Anyone else
here.
want a plate?
That's 4 for you, though.
Yeah, well, Mr. Ryan have a plate.
I pass them on to my colleague on my work.
You don't have to worry about me, ladies, I'm in training.
We're gonna share when I'm done.
I'm not.
We have one. God. I
You
know
gonna
we
get
can
any?
pass it out.
So this is a moist chocolate cupcake with rainbow whipped vanilla frosting, and the other one is a lemon cupcake. Am I correct?
Yes.
And strawberry frosting.
Yep, strawberry whipped cream frosting. With a
Wow.
strawberry rose, of course.
Yes.
Very nicely
Beautiful.
done.
Cool.
Very nice.
Nice presentation.
We'll have to leave them out here so that people can see them the whole meeting.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Yours is already half gone, huh?
There he goes.
Well,
Better give Mr. Wrigley another napkin.
Would anyone else like a
It's only a
cupcake?
joke.
no, thank you very much for coming by and visiting with us. The town administrator is always available if you have things you'd like to drop off for him. And we're very happy that you came by, and your families and you should be very proud of yourselves.
Good luck with the show.
Yeah,
Good job.
Good luck.
Better, batter, bacon.
Better, better.
Catchy too.
Very cool name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone like a fork?
They're gone.
I could have used one of them.
That would have been a good idea.
I think you
Thank
need a
you.
bill.
Well, for those of you who are here on town business, we appreciate your patience with us. And that's going to jump us right ahead because I see Bob Wilbur here. So let's take up the special liquor license for the Stow Conservation Trust at Carver Hill Orchard.
Okay.
Mr. Wilbur, thank you. Could you state your name and address for the record?
Thanks for coming. Bob Wilbur, 288 Red Apron Road, and that is officially a really tough act to follow.
What do you got?
No cupcakes, no license, dude.
You'll have to wait a month
All right.
or two. So as everybody knows, the partnership between the trust and the Town Conservation Commission has succeeded in raising the additional funds needed to augment the community preservation funds to protect both Small Farm and Carver Hill Orchard. That's terrific news. We really felt like we asked the community to really step up, and they did. And so we want to have a celebration at Carver Hill Orchard. A lot of people during the campaign, I did mention that they didn't know where it was. Perhaps they hadn't been there because it was off the beaten path. So it's a good chance to get any of those people to come on over and see just how beautiful it is next to Town Forest and Elizabeth Brook. And so on Saturday, June 2nd, we'll be holding a celebration event on site at Carver Hill. That will be from 3 to 7 p.m. From 3 to 5 p.m. will be family and kids oriented games and other things, and perhaps some hay rides around the orchard. And then from 5 to 7 p.m., thanks to the Stow Cultural Council, and by extension the Mass Cultural Commission, they gave a grant to the trust to hire music for an event. And I'm thrilled to say we've hired a really top-shelf bluegrass band called the Blackstone Valley Bluegrass Band. Wow. And they will be playing from 5 to 7 p.m. That evening. Greg Hill and his Battle Road Brewery over in Maynard were nice enough. Nice it doesn't even do it. I mean, it's really appreciated to help recognize and commemorate the Save Stow's Farms effort. They brewed a special brew called Stow Farms Session Ale, and that is, as I understand it, it is just started being sold yesterday over at the brewery there, and a portion of the proceeds will go to help support the Save Stow's Farms effort going forward. So that's a long way of saying they will be at the event on Saturday, June 2nd. They would like to be at the event pending a one-day liquor license to permit that for sale of their microbrews and wine during the hours of the event.
Now, there was some new changes to the Massachusetts liquor law that went into effect last April. You might want to double check those about which kinds of liquors can be donated. But our town administrator, our administrative assistants have worked with that new law before in connection with the Ari Schultz matter, and they can provide you with guidance, or at least the statute. But having said that, congratulations on the success of the efforts. And even though Stow Conservation Trust has got an interest in the land, this is still not public land.
That's correct. This will remain private land as it's been for 2 centuries, essentially. They've always been very public spirited. Town Forest came from that family, and they have granted trail easements through the property that will provide access to the town forest from that side for the first time.
And I just wanted to make that clear to anyone who's watching at home, that we're not making public land available for this kind of event. But having said that, it has been our practice in recent months, it's not encoded in policy, to have someone from the organization holding an event that requires a special liquor license to designate somebody who would be the primary person in control or overseeing the distribution of liquor. Who's that going to be?
So does that need to be a member of the organization?
We need somebody who's responsible and kind of will just make sure that nothing gets out of hand. Thank you very much. All right, I'm sorry, do my colleagues have any questions or comments?
You like a motion?
If there are no questions or comments, certainly I will take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign a special one-day liquor license for the Stow Conservation Trust for a farm fest to be held at Carver Hill Orchard on Saturday, June 2nd, 2018, between 3 and 7 p.m.
Second.
We've got a motion and second. No further questions or comments. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Bob.
Terrific. Thank you.
A lot to celebrate.
Thanks very much.
You might want to wait till we give you the liquor license.
Yes.
We're going to sign it first.
Okay. All right.
Can't trust them.
And I'll just point out that there's still a lot of work to be done to take advantage of the state grant that got us to the finish line. Nobody knows that more than Kathy Sferra, who's working very hard on completing a number of transactions. You have to be up to date with all of your conservation restrictions, for instance. So even something like the Minister's Pond conservation restriction has to be hustled to the finish line so that we can get that state grant. And both Carver Hill conservation restriction and small farm conservation restriction also need to go to record by the end of June. So there's a lot of work being done right now behind the scenes.
That's why you're gonna be the responsible party, because you can't.
That's right.
Thank you. You have to work that day.
Thank you. That's correct.
We're grateful for everything that SCT does for this town in preserving our open spaces and our agricultural heritage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the long partnerip we've had with the
Yes,
town.
this is a tangible expression of our appreciation.
You've done so much.
That's terrific. Thank you. I enjoy that.
I am
They're ready for
you.
tomorrow,
Okay, great.
or whenever.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Now, we skipped correspondence. Is there any correspondence that anybody wants to talk about? Seeing none, I'll move on to our treasurer and her presentation of a renewal of the Fire Station Community Center Bond Anticipation Note. Slandra, you want to come forward and identify yourself?
I'm Pam Landry, the treasurer collector for the town.
Just for the record, just for the people at home.
You might not know. So we're renewing the bond anticipation note that we took out a year ago for another year for $9,705,000. And it was bought by TD Securities, an interest rate of 3%. And they give us back a premium of $108,501, which gives us a net interest rate of 1.88%.
Anything else? During his town administrator's report, our town administrator will be explaining some of the work he did so that we could get such a great interest rate. but is there anything about this particular bond or ban that you need to inform the board of at this point?
I think I summarized the process where Pam and I and Julie were in a conference call almost 2 weeks ago with Standard & Poor's, representatives from Standard & Poor's, for the express purpose of them asking us certain financial, fiscal, and budgetary questions with respect to management. They have all of our documents through audit and DOR, and lasted about 45 minutes. It's becoming rather routine now, but it was required before the issuance of this. So I think, as I stated in my report, that when the conversation was over, they decided to affirm our AAA rating. And for this particular band note, they credited it with a SP 1+, which is their highest on this issuance. So, continued good news on the town's credit rating.
I actually made a copy of the report, if you guys would like one. Did you read yours?
I sent it to him.
Oh, you already had it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Clerk?
Just for the benefit of those folks who don't live with the lingo and the practice that goes with it, someone at home might be wondering, gee, the whole project is completed down there now. Why are we still issuing an anticipation note as opposed to the bond itself? Can you enlighten us on that?
Well, there's a few reasons. The main one was, we've been playing this all along. We were waiting for the Hale School project to be paid off. Next year is the last payment on that. If we had bonded this, we'd have to make a much larger payment next year, because the interest rate would be a little bit higher, and we'd have to pay more principal.
It was a
So
commitment
that
we
with
made
the-
several years ago to
Yeah.
stretch the band notes, as you know,
So
try to
otherwise, it'd be,
flatten the
little
curve
spike
out.
in the tax rate.
Yeah.
So
We
we're trying
have-
to keep it something.
And I think we have that flexibility into the new municipal
They've extended periods of
modernization.
time.
Actually, you can go out
Yeah.
10 years now. I think.
Yeah, we won't need that.
But we won't do that. I hope to
No, 10
bond it
years
next
on
year.
bands?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I hope to bond it a year from now. So.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question,
Yes.
Fox?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
I just think when the going interest rate is 3%, and because of your financial condition, you qualify for basically a 1.1% premium discount. That's just terrific. It's tangible return, literally, on the efforts that have been made primarily by the town administrator over the past 10, 12 years, if not longer. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
And thank the town administrator for getting us such a cheap rate by your
It's-
dint of your hard work and efforts.
Actually, it is the entire team administratively with regard to finance and budgeting, and, I'm the slave driver, but bottom line is, somebody has to actually make sure the numbers tie out and, the things that we shouldn't do. And, the policies that you approved several years ago, we have 4 of them, you probably remember that part of it. Big aspect of it as well, one of the things that Standard & Poor's looks for now is not just best practices, but you've got written and approved policies by the chief executive officers, which is yourselves. So, we continue to do what we're supposed to do.
Well, we thank you for driving the process, not slaves, but the process. I'll take a motion then.
And we think that this motion is good enough, Pam?
yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, as recommended by the treasurer, I move to approve the sale of $9,705,000 in bond anticipation notes at 3% interest dated May 1, 2018 and payable May 1, 2019 to TD Securities USA LLC at par and accrued interest, if any, plus a premium of $108,501.90 for the Fire Station Community Center project, and to authorize the board's clerk to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the board.
Second.
All right, and I thank Mr. Salvi and our clerk for working with the treasurer to get that language just right before the meeting. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I just need you to sign all these.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, you
but-
sign it, Ken.
We look forward to this.
No
Well, then you can
frosting on
thank
them.
us after we sign that.
I did bring a pen.
I brought one too. No frosting on
All
them.
right, this
All right.
is the actual bond. I actually need
Oh.
Don to sign these 4.
Do anybody else have to sign this?
Yeah, no, just,
Just Don signs,
Yeah.
so it's
Oh,
four.
that's right. Thank you.
and
Excellent cupcakes, by the way.
You go through both of them already?
No, I don't want to, price, I took the fruit off the top, now we gotta kind of,
You're committed to it.
and I'm gonna,
actually I should probably.
Just
I
pass
don't
them.
know.
Let
I was
them
going
do
to
theirs.
wait,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to.
This is called vamping.
Want me to skip you?
We have a picture of Mr. Salvi eating. We have that?
I eat like a dog.
And signing.
That's why I didn't want to go on TV.
that's descriptive, though. In there.
Oh, what, these are
I think there's 4 of each, so it's
4 of each.
like 3
Oh,
files.
my lord.
What are we signing, 2 different documents?
There's a
Actually,
lot of different.
4. No, there's 4 copies of each, so it's like 16, 17.
It's when we need background music. That's what they're doing. C-SPAN.
I could make a mention of the, our new tabulators that we purchased will be used at the annual town meeting, and we're gonna be doing a ballot test on May 2nd. Anybody can come and watch, it's open to the public. Get to see them.
Thank you, Madam Town Clerk.
And we're all ready.
Are they
Town meeting
encrypted, are
election?
they encrypted so we're not exposed to hackers?
You can't. There's
Okay.
not connected to
They
the
always say
internet.
you
They're
can't.
not
Don't say
connected to
you
the internet.
That's the best way to protect yourself.
They're not connected to the internet.
Are there ballot machines someplace connected?
Oh,
In
yeah.
some states, I think they do have electronic, because they merge all the data.
Mr. Chairman, request permission to open a window or two.
That's just a wonderful idea. Can I help you?
No, I think I'm good.
This one's a crop.
It's not fair, these lawyers have fast signatures.
And you can't read them. Oh, that's another thing. I'm certifying lots of nomination papers for this, on the state level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the handwriting is atrocious.
Yes, but you know mine by now.
I do know yours, but there's a lot of others. So I'm asking people to write legibly. The clerk's eyes are older and a little harder to read.
Oh, but they still look young, Madam
Oh,
Town Clerk.
thank you. I have boots at home too. Thank you, Mr.
I give
Chairman.
compliments, I give
You
cupcakes,
do.
and I still get,
You do.
oh, well. Wouldn't be Stow if it
Most
was.
situations, you would think, print your name as well as sign it.
I know, and that's a fault of
think I
the
already gave it
state's nomination papers. But a lot of people will sign their
I
names
do.
and then print, and that is very helpful.
I do. Now, if you guys want to take just a moment after you leave to make sure that everything's signed.
Sure,
And if it isn't, you can always come back and,
we will. Do we have all the, just
We're
a
just
few
waiting.
down there? Yeah, we'll just go out into the other room.
This is the 4th
Oh,
one,
there's the fourth.
tax certificate.
and if anything, or if there's any signature missing, you just come back in and we'll
Yep.
sneak you right in.
It's good so far.
I think that's yours.
Oh,
There's just one of those.
yeah.
Thank you again.
Well, thank you. Next time I'll bring sweets.
I
Did
think
get
that-
put on earlier.
I think that's going to be the order in every single agenda from now on.
Thank you.
And that brings us to a matter that I'm not that familiar with, so I appreciate the discussion from ORS and the submission of comments on a draft permit from the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System for the Hudson wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Fierce, would you come up and introduce yourself?
Also referred to as NPDES.
I do not have the nimbleness of your tongue to say that. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Do you know?
Allison Juma from ORS.
Yes.
Thanks for having us. It probably is a topic that could consume your entire night, so maybe you ought to give us some guidance on how much time
You don't need
really want to
guidance.
spend on this.
Well, this
5 minutes.
You're gonna
10
bring
minutes.
cupcakes. My colleague, Mr. Ryan, makes a good point, but this is a matter that, as I understand, predates my...
Oh, yeah. This is another process that the Stow town government has been involved in successfully, and I think it's about 13 years, just like your last topic. So it goes back to about 2005.
Okay.
But
Why don't we just then give us an overview and then...
okay, I'm going to give you a quick overview of...
And we have your materials.
Alan, just before you start, I want to disclose that I am on the board of ORS. I think I can separate myself, but if you feel concerned, then I will recuse myself. I don't think I'm in a conflict situation.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Mr. Town Administrator, does anyone think there's a need for our colleague to... All right.
We agree with that. I should probably fully disclose, I am currently the president of the board at ORS. But I feel like I'm sitting here both as a Stow resident and a representative of ORS. Because
fine.
I think there's alignment in our
Well, you're not gonna-
interests in this situation. So
Well, you're not going to be voting on anything, so...
I'm not, but just wanted to let you know. So
Thank you.
I'm going to take a couple minutes, and then I'd like Allison to give you a little more detail on this particular permit that we're talking about. But the background here is, this is the Assabet River, flows for about 6 miles through Stow. It's been something that Stow has always treated as one of its greatest assets, not just environmental asset, but an asset for the whole town, because it's used in so many ways. The Environmental Protection Agency and Mass DEP issue permits for discharge of wastewater from 4 treatment plants on the Assabet. 3 of them are upstream from Stow. Those are in Northborough, Westborough, Marlborough. Northborough, Westborough is 1. Marlborough, and then Hudson. Below us is Maynard. These wastewater treatment plant permits are typically issued every 5 years. This one had gotten delayed significantly. But it all began back in around 2004 when everybody involved got together and did what is called a total maximum daily load study of phosphorus, because we have a river that is severely eutrophic. It's been in bad shape. It's getting better. Allison can tell you more about that. But it's getting better because these permits have required the 4 treatment plants to reduce their discharge of phosphorus primarily. The permits cover all pollutants, but it's the phosphorus, the nutrients in the water that are causing the problem, which is excessive weed growth, excessive duckweed, excessive macrophytes, which are the larger weeds, and does bad things to the river as well. Can't paddle in it. The fish lose oxygen as a result of the decaying plant life and whatnot. So this total maximum daily load study was done in 2004, and it was decided to do 2 rounds of permits, 5 years each, to get to water quality standards, which are, for the Assabet is a Class B river, which is supposed to be, quote, fishable and swimmable. It's fishable to some extent now, but it could be much better. It's not swimmable yet. The first round of permits came out in 2005. Stow was involved They looked at those permits. It was their first involvement. They were somewhat hesitant. They looked at what ORS was doing, sort of supported it, and said, look, we don't disagree with anything you're doing. They didn't file comments. Permits came out. Stow wasn't particularly happy with the permit, nor was ORS. ORS appealed. We could appeal because we had filed comments. Stow couldn't appeal. They had not filed comments. Stow nevertheless retained counsel. Bill probably remembers this, filed an amicus brief during that round of permits in 2005. So Stow was involved then. Those permits ultimately came out and resulted in major upgrades to the wastewater treatment plants, which have helped the rivers a great deal. The second set of permits was supposed to come out in 2010 and get us to water quality standards. Delay. Here we are, it's 2018. Hold that thought for a minute. In 2009, sort of in the middle of the permit cycle, Marlborough applied for a modification to its permit because it wanted to increase the flow, which means discharge another 40% more wastewater to the river.
Do you mind, just a quick interruption, I think it might help, I know it'll help me, it might help people at home. When you say discharge and wastewater.
Treated wastewater.
Pardon?
Treated wastewater.
Okay, just explain, because I know there's phosphorus in it, that part is clear. Is there anything else that our residents would like to know about?
Yeah, I'll get a little bit.
Give her an hour.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there are lots of pollutants in wastewater, despite the fact that it's treated. Many are removed and many remain, so it's.
This is all just secondary treatment, right?
It's actually tertiary treatment,
Now.
because it's, yes, it used to be much worse when there wasn't any, and then
Before
slowly it's been
treatment
ramped up.
plants, we had a real problem.
One
But
at
the
a time, one at a
tertiary
time.
treatment is to remove the phosphorus.
Oh,
It's
okay.
focused
Reduce that.
solely on that,
Okay.
and that's what was the major upgrade. The plants needed to be rebuilt anyway, they were all crumbling and old, but that was the big item, really, was to increase the phosphorus removal.
May I just ask one clarifying question on the historical relevance of this, because something tells me we're going to hear more about it.
Certainly, Ms. Gordon.
Thank you. You said that we filed an amicus brief because you and we were not happy with the standards.
Yeah, the phase one permit standards.
Did the resulting standards that came out, you referenced there was an upgrade, were any of our collective input a part of that change, that positive improvement?
Yes. It's a little complicated, but there ended up being a negotiated settlement of those appeals where the concerns of the appellants and your concerns as the town of Stow as an amicus brief were very much part of that negotiation.
Right, that's-
And what I'm doing is really outlining not just the permits, but Stow's involvement here.
Yes.
So the next thing I wanted to say is mid-cycle, 2008, Marlborough applies for a permit modification to increase its discharge of treated wastewater by 40%. Stow files comments, ORS files comments, objecting. And I actually have this is a copy. I believe the original had the Stow Board of Selectmen's letterhead on it, and the comments were filed both. It was jointly signed by Tom Ruggiero as Chair of the Board of Selectmen and Dennis Walsh, Vice Chair of the Conservation Commission. ORS filed comments. The permit ultimately was issued. We both, ORS and Stow, objected, among others, and filed appeal papers using town council. I assisted some with the drafting of those papers to keep the cost down. That ultimately was a successful endeavor. Marlborough was not allowed its wastewater discharge flow increased. We waited for round 2 of the permits to issue. We still hadn't achieved water quality standards with the phosphorus levels that was in the first set of permits. They were administratively continued in place from their expiration date in 2010 until EPA could get around to issuing the next round of draft permits. 4 wastewater treatment plants.
Again, I apologize. EPA issues the permits?
EPA
Or the towns do?
EPA is
I
the
see.
party authorized with assistance from DEP. State and the feds get together.
It's part of the Clean Water Act.
This is all under the Federal Clean Water Act.
And I'm sure, but the town, I'm just trying to get the dynamics here. The town doesn't apply for the permit?
The town of Hudson, for example, applies for a renewal of their
I
permit.
see, okay.
And then the EPA and DEP issue that permit.
Okay.
But first they issue the draft and
Oh.
period of comment, which is what we're in now,
Uh-huh.
and then they issue the final permit.
That's just what I was about to say. That's exactly where we are. So a new round of permits are coming out. Hudson, the one we're talking about tonight, is the first of what we expect to be 4 permits this year. So what I'm hoping to do tonight, with Allison's help and yours, is to establish kind of a workflow plan for these 4 permits. When they come out in draft form, everyone in the public has 30 days to comment. That's it. In this permit, our 30 days expire on May 10th, which is a Thursday, about 2 weeks from now. ORS is often filed very detailed and technical comments. We aren't expecting that from the town of Stow, although there's some fairly technical stuff in the comments filed on Marlboro. It's up to you. We've always shared, we at ORS have always shared our thoughts, our comments with the town as quickly as we can so that you can, if you want to, use those to help formulate your own comments. We're more than happy to do that here again. I think maybe I ought to turn it over to Allison for a little more detail on this particular permit. I think our comments aren't going to be as critical, perhaps, as we have been in the past. But I just wanted you to know that I am still available, sitting, wearing my Town of Stow hat, to help out in any way I can, putting those comments together. But at the same time, wearing my ORS hat, I understand the Town of Stow wants to do its own comments, and we absolutely do not want to dictate to you what those comments could be. Your comments are your comments, and they don't need to be identical. So,
Well, okay, we'll just stop you there, because, and the workflow plan, the characterization is a good one, because we're talking about work, and when this first came on the agenda, I asked that, I agree that it should be on, but I guess it comes down to work. Who's gonna write these comments?
I can describe a little bit how we also worked with the National Park Service, because it's a wild and scenic river downstream of here, and the National Park Service often comments as well. And we at ORS have often done, in working with others, drafted up our comments and, as Allan said, shared them. And that has really provided a pretty useful base for the National Park Service to generate their comments. So
Share
it's
them prior to the deadline for filing?
Definitely.
has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I think that, as Allan says, it's going to be, it's the town's perspective. You have some different interests than, each party has their own interests, but I think that can work very smoothly.
Well, here's what I'm sorry, Mr. Town Administrator, if you have some
As a
thoughts.
practical matter, in the past, it was ORS taking the lead, us accepting the offer to take the lead, and substantively, I think most of the issues in detail, any specificity in it, consequences, were really framed by you folks, and we might have put our name to it, and John might have, made some minor changes, but we weren't doing any heavy lifting in the past.
And the town's comments, as Allan said, ours can be very detailed at ORS. Yours don't have to be that detailed. Just say, these are our concerns. We see this as what the situation is. We support this. We don't support that. It doesn't have to be very odious.
Yes, Alan, you have a thought, and then I have a question
Yeah.
again.
Oh, well, I've always been willing to help participate in drafting comments or appeals, and I continue to make that offer. Let me just check with Ingeborg. My recollection is on the last set of comments that I mentioned, the ones that were jointly submitted by the Concom and the Selectmen, is that the Conservation Commission took the lead, and maybe you were involved in drafting, or...
What year is this one?
This is 2008.
Right, I believe, Mr. Chair, if I can respond to that.
Oh, of course, thank you.
What can be done is that we can, in our correspondence, rely on the expertise provided by ORS. And we can review their comments and their points. It is a fairly chemical, technical, hydrologic analysis of what is proposed and being proposed to be approved by DEP and EPA. But I think it makes sense to rely on the expertise provided by our Watershed Association and then amend it slightly, as Allan and Allison are saying, to perhaps address some of our agricultural issues, our water supply issues, our volume of water, our groundwater, and all how our ecological system connects, and that the river is not only an aesthetic and recreational feature, but it's also critical to Stow's ecological health. And so we could take that spin on it. So that's the history. And yes, in the past, different members of the commission have helped write these letters and could do so.
When you say
also.
commission, you mean the Conservation Commission?
Sorry, the Conservation Commission.
Sorry, thank you.
That I'm also a member of. So that could happen. I know that our staff is very busy right now and doesn't want to, I haven't spoken to them about this, but we have a deadline coming up. And I think one of the things that we need to discuss this evening is, I guess, twofold. Is one, are we interested in participating in this review? And secondly, how will we do that given the tight time frame and the need to have a meeting at our pre-town meeting?
And I'm perfectly willing to do that. And I'm sorry, these are donkey questions because I don't have the expertise to talk
Well,
about
that's
phosphorus.
good. You do the financial part and I'll do the part.
It's not even a question of financial, but it's
No,
a
I just
question.
meant, when you guys are talking about budgets and finance, I'm sitting there all over, fine, but you know, so I have the donkey questions then.
We all bring our different experiences and views to bear on all the questions. That's why we have a group, a committee. But I see our Conservation Department, Kathy Savara in the audience. Here's my question. I mean, yes, we could discuss whether or not we should engage in the process, and I'm willing to do that. But I think what our staff needs to know is, what is it, if we agree to do this, what kind of work do you expect us to do?
It's not a heavy lift, if we can rely on your expertise.
So, I mean...
I don't think we need to rewrite anything.
Yeah.
We've been doing this.
If I could throw in...
Yeah, and perhaps I am being unclear about this.
No, you're not.
Being dense.
This has come up twice since I've been on the board that I could find from my old files. Came up shortly after I got on the board in 2010, but the action or appeal had just been filed in 2009. And it came up again in 2013 when Marlborough, there was a draft permit from Marlborough, similar to what's going on right now, and we did exactly the same thing, I think, in both instances. ORS took the lead, and we instructed staff to review and add any additional comment. And we did it primarily because, obviously, we have an interest in standing shoulder to shoulder with them here. We are downstream of 3 wastewater treatment plants that are putting more phosphorus than they should be into the river. And if we don't comment, we can't appeal. As you've pointed out in another administrative matter, that's a really important thing.
Again, I have no problem, and we will hold that discussion. In fact, if we want to hold it now, we can. But I'm saying, even if we gave you our intent that we should submit comments and that you could draft them up, I just want to find out how that's going to, how that's actually going to be done, the workflow point that you made.
I have a suggestion, which is, I believe there's a Conservation Commission meeting next Tuesday.
We are tentatively on the agenda.
And we are tentatively on the agenda, you know, at that point, I don't know what our.
We can have,
We can have
we will
a
have our-
draft
We will certainly be
of
ready.
something to show to the commission at that point. I mean, this document, the last time comments were submitted, it was both the Conservation Commission and the Selectmen. If that's what you want to do again, we could try to get the Conservation Commission's approval on a you know, a document that can be shared. I don't know if you're going to have time to review that document, but perhaps Bill, if you authorized him, could sign off on behalf of the Selectmen.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, otherwise it sounds like we've got to get back before you.
It can just be the town.
Well, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. Let's hear from Mr. Selvig.
I don't think we need to micromanage this workflow. I think we need to make the policy decision of whether or not to make comments, and I think the answer there should be yes. And then come up with some individual, whether it's Bill or Kathy, to work with you to make sure that we file something with the understanding that ORS will be taking the lead, and either we're joining in your document or filing a short document of our own. I looked back in 2013, it looked like John Whitten drew up a 6-page brief. I would suggest that that might be the full extent of our involvement tonight.
Yeah.
And I would want to make sure, has anyone told John Whitten about this?
Well, can I just say, I'm not sure John has been involved in the comments previously. He certainly has been involved in any time we filed an appeal.
Okay, point taken. Still, though, I think we make the policy decision to participate, to comment. We delegate it to someone to make sure it gets done with the understanding with you that you're taking the lead. I don't think that we need to review a document that's all about phosphate levels. That would just be a waste of time.
Well, I agree with everything up until your last sentence, Mrs. Salvi, but we should throw it open to a broader discussion from our colleagues. Yes, Tom?
If I got some of the comments right to begin with, it can be as simple or as complex as we want. And if somehow we put together a quick letter that just said, we're worried, you know, the river's getting better, we want to keep it getting better, we have these couple concerns about this permit, this is information that we understand is in the permit, and we'd like to make sure that the river stays good, then we've made comments, correct? And, you know, then anything that goes against those wishes, we would then be able to appeal.
And more. One of the slightly unusual rules in legal matters is that anyone who files comments has the right to appeal regarding any of the comments filed by anyone. So it's not just your narrow set of comments.
So I think
So
that-
Tom is exactly right. Simply by putting in almost a placeholder set of comments, you've opened the door for you to participate
Right.
in the appeal process.
And with backup provided by you guys, you know, whether, you know, and we can even attribute it to you guys, but this is, you know.
Well, here would be my concern. I agree with Mr. Ryan's approach generally. And I don't worry, I'm going to get Mr. Hawks' input, I'm going to get Ms. Hegerman Clark's input. The problem I have with just giving to you carte blanche to write whatever comments you want with Conservation Commission, and we haven't even checked with Conservation to see if they can willingly work, you know, that they're willing and able to work with you. But assuming all that, and we just let you do it and submit it, then it's just going to look like to whomever's looking at it that we didn't, you know, we just gave carte blanche to you and we don't really have any strong comments, or excuse me, we don't really have any decided opinions. My thought was if you could, and Kathy, would you be willing and able to get us something for our pre-town meeting, just so that we can say we looked at it before we voted on it?
Yeah,
That would be my point.
What I was going to say is if Allan/Allison can get us at least, you know, bullet points or draft comments by Friday this week or Monday, I think we could put together a letter that the commission could look at on Tuesday night, so that they've had a chance to see it and then get it to you for.
And that would be Mr. Ryan's point. Okay, I want to get your input, Mr. Clark.
Well, couldn't that be, if we have a chance to actually cast our eyes on this document in the half hour before we meet at town meeting, then we could co-sign the same letter rather than, which would accomplish your ends of making us a party or as a.
Yeah, my preference, I don't know whether I'm wearing, which hat I'm wearing, my preference would be 2 letters. I really like seeing the town of Stow's letterhead on a comment
But
that
even if
gets
if it
submitted.
were just a couple of bullet points saying we support all of the points put forth by the town and
That's all you
conservation
need to do.
documents.
Because, you know, I think if it comes down to it, right, I don't mind if they put more water in there, as long as there's less nutrients. You know, how it gets there, you know, and I'm not a hydrologist or anything else, but
You're nothing?
I'm nothing when it comes to this. But the
And I'm
thing is,
less than nothing.
You know, but I know I don't want the Assabet to get any worse than it is, and I can say that.
We're trying to make it better.
And, yeah, right, and there may be some things that you guys may push for that we might not agree with, but the thing is, I think to Bill's point, it can be pretty pro forma, and I think I understand it, and I think we should go forward with some sort of joint letter to get on record, so that if something really onerous comes up, we have the chance to comment on it.
Just on the last point, Mr. Ryan, I think Mr. Attorney Fierce was suggesting a separate letter. It can be joint in the sense that we're saying, we agree with oars, we agree with oars. I mean, a joint letter with conservation.
Yes.
Is that what you're
Right.
talking about? Yes, I got you.
Joint letter of conference, but under your own letterhead, and it can have a sentence, that, just like the highlighted sentence there, you know, we support, you know, many of the comments submitted by oars, you know.
Yeah, and if there's something buried in there, because it says many of them, we haven't agreed with all of them.
I probably wrote that, so I don't think so.
I'm sorry?
I probably wrote that, so I don't think so.
Yeah, no, this one looks like it was drafted, you know, by someone at the Conservation Commission.
All right, then let me ask both the Conservation Department and our town administrator, is that doable? I mean, I expect if you guys can put together a joint letter for us to review, I don't know that we're gonna spend a whole lot of time debating it just before town meeting.
When is your, you said a
Town meeting night.
May 7th.
May 7th.
Okay.
Well, while it may sound kind of funny, is that letter that Ingeborg may or may not have written a few years ago, changing a couple paragraphs to reference new stuff, suitable?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that was what my comment was going to be, is that we can take these letters and put our Board of Selectmen's specific point of view into it, so that it has a different, and we'll see what ORS does, we'll see what the Concom does, and we can add something and then make reference to the technical piece.
And did I get an answer from Kathy, is that gonna be doable for you?
I think so.
I mean, because we will, of course, rely on your drafting and your knowledge of the technical subjects, I'm sure heavily.
I'll make it.
So, I just want to make sure that if anything the board decides to author, and for me to sign, we've at least seen it
Yeah.
before it actually is put to a vote. And as I said, I don't expect we're going to be wordsmithing the thing with you.
No, I understand fully, you know, you want at least the opportunity, so.
Well, otherwise, it means nothing. It's
Right.
just, we signed, you're just going to be telling the DEP, hey, we got them to let us
Yeah.
sign their name to it. Mr. Town Administrator, do you have any thoughts on this process?
Nothing that would change the course of action currently in place, so.
And
Any other thoughts from my colleagues?
I applaud your wanting to actually see it before you sign it, that's a good thing.
Oh, well, I'm not here for credit, but the credit, if anything, is due to Mr. Fierce. Your mastery of the litigation history shows your deep interest and commitment to the whole Assabet River and keeping it as clean as possible. And we thank ORS for coming, and we know that they do a great deal of work to make our river, our big river, enjoyable and to be enjoyed.
And we want to thank the town of Stow. You know, the town of Stow's involvement in this process over the last 13 years we think has been important. And it makes a difference when you're sitting there at EPA and you see, oh, here's a town that's because you're basically the only one. The others who are interested in the town are interested in their wastewater treatment plants and keeping their costs down and, you know.
And here's a town right down the river.
So here's the town that's at the receiving end that's concerned. And so, thank you, Town of Stow. I remember something I didn't mention was the Army Corps of Engineers study about dam removal. I remember a meeting, a townwide meeting over at Hale, I believe, in 2007. The room was packed. People were very angry with the notion of dam removal. And so it's not just thanking the selectmen, I want to thank the citizens of Stow.
Yep.
They are interested in this river and are very protective of it.
No, those are all good points, and when we become pariahs in Hudson as well as Sudbury, it'll be all worthwhile.
If I can make a comment, I really thank you for, you know, Allan, you've been doing this for a long time, you know, and I appreciate your input, because if you guys weren't coming to us right now, we might not even know about it. So it's very much appreciated that you guys are involved in it and bring it to us, and without water, we're all nothing.
All right, if there are no other comments, I think we have a consensus of the board, which is what you came to us tonight. We have a consensus that you'll be working with Conservation over the next couple of weeks to get us something. If you could just get it to us, I mean, our town meeting is on a Monday. If you can get to us on Friday, as I said, I don't think we're going to be wordsmithing it when we vote on it on that pre-town meeting, but it would be helpful if we can say that we've reviewed it and that we support it enthusiastically. That's really what you'd want to be able to tell people, isn't it?
Right.
So you want the motion that would authorize going ahead on the lines we discussed? Excuse me, sir.
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Clerk.
And then there would be a very short motion at that meeting, our pre-town meeting, which will be the actual support document, because then we will have had a chance to review it.
As I said, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Clerk, but maybe I wasn't clear. I don't think we need a motion. I think we have a consensus of the board, is what I was saying, about how we're going to move forward on this with this workflow. But, of course, if any member wants to make a motion, they're free to do so.
There'll be a motion to submit the comments when we see them.
Yes, and then it will be on the agenda with the discussion and with a vote.
Okay. All right.
You're willing to work under that?
Absolutely, and, you know, again, I just want to underscore that this is the first of, well, for ORS, it's going to be the first of 4, but probably the first of 3 for you. I don't know that you'll be commenting on the permit for Maynard, since it's downstream.
Well, we'll get better each time.
Okay. Can I just ask one question?
Certainly.
You mentioned this one's for Hudson.
Yes.
Correct? Now, is it as onerous as we were worried about Marlboro a few years ago, or is it fairly benign?
It's actually fairly benign, as in your words. It does not have a lot of the things that we have been concerned about in the past. It does not ask for a flow increase. The town did not ask for a flow increase, and it doesn't grant one. It actually does reduce the phosphorus going into the river, because it has more strict winter limits in it. They were concerned about actually endocrine disruptors that they found in the waste stream, and the permit actually requires Hudson to eliminate it. One in particular. One in particular. So there are definitely things, I think, that are good in here, and I think it's really important to say that in a letter, to support the good things as well as to point out the things that you're concerned about. So, you know, there are some other things that we may be concerned about, but they're not nearly at the level of concern in the past.
And I actually agree with you 100% that it's good to say the good things rather than always be a naysayer. You know, nothing's ever good enough. So I think I fully support that from a conceptual standpoint.
And there may also be pushback from, say, the municipality, so you want to push also to preserve the things that are good so that they don't get removed.
We're looking forward to the draft by May 4th. Friday, May 4th.
We're going to work with Conservation Commission by next Tuesday and, which is the first. And by a few days after that, we ought to have something that we can share with you. So, okay.
Well, thank you very much for willing to agree, for everybody at this table and in the audience for working together on this. And I'm glad you were here to get our support. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your cupcakes.
Do you want one?
You guys can split one.
No, you gotta-
take one home to my wife.
Okay, now, I think we have a slideshow or
Magic lantern.
magic lantern presentation by the Conservation Department. Would you like to step forward and introduce yourselves again to the, not to the board, but to the audience at home?
See if I can get the magic genie to work here. Mike, are you joining me?
Come on.
All right, Jim, why don't you introduce ours?
Unless somebody else here can. There we go. All right.
Maybe we can get the lights.
All right, Ski, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Sure, we will. So I'm Kathy Spare, I'm the Conservation Coordinator. Whoa, that's way
Wow.
too dark. I
Maybe
think,
just one.
I think that'll be.
There's only one
There's only
switch.
Oh.
And I'm
We can
here
take this
tonight
good.
with Mike Kopczynski from SMAHT. A couple of other members of SMAHT are here, a couple of the neighbors to the property, and also Bob Wilbur from Stow Conservation Trust. And this is sort of a two-part agenda item tonight. What we wanted to do is give you a quick update on the project, and then SMAHT has a particular request that they want to make. So I'm going to do the first part of the show, and then Mike's going to take over from there.
And then we'll take questions or comments from the town, even though we're not going to be doing anything to vote on this tonight, but I'll afford anyone who's here on this topic a chance to be heard.
And I did not bring cupcakes, but we brought a great project. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through. Hold on. This website wants to kick in here. A little bit of background. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. I think you've seen some of them before, and just kind of set the stage. But the town is currently holding a purchase and sale agreement to acquire the Kunelius property on Red Acre Road. It's shown in this slide in pink. Property is about 49 acres. It has frontage on Tuttle Lane up at the north end of the property, and then it also has dedicated access out to Red Acre Road. There are a number of existing trails. This map kind of shows the context with Flag Hill, Captain Sargent, and Red Acre Woodlands, and the Brown Trail network that connects all of those properties. There is already a connector trail across the Kunelius property that is somewhat used, but not really an official trail, but I've shown how that kind of fits into the system here. And there was actually a fair bit of work done a number of years ago to explore the feasibility of water on the property. There's actually a test well put in and a pump test done. It is believed that the property lies above a fairly high yield aquifer with some good water quality. There are a number of existing structures on the property. We'll see a couple pictures later. They are in poor condition, and the property is currently in Chapter 61. There is tonight seems to be the night of history and projects. There's a history with this project that goes back about 15 years. I won't go into this in detail, but basically a couple of efforts to acquire the property back in the early 2000s in response to a large 40B that was proposed on the site, a 30-unit 40B. The town actually voted to assign its Chapter 61 right of first refusal to the Trust for Public Land. You all, I'm sure, recall that they defaulted on that contract. Litigation resulted, which Marilyn Kunelius lost. And the property has essentially sat since that time. A couple of years ago, the property was relisted by Marilyn Kunelius at $1.5 million. And there's been a number of price reductions over the years. Back in December, Stow Conservation Trust and the Conservation Commission were finally able to reach agreement with Marilyn to buy the property for $450,000. So Conservation Trust really stepped up and secured that opportunity by putting down a non-refundable deposit of $22,500 so that we could have the opportunity to consider the property at this town meeting. Since then, we've done title, we've done an environmental site assessment, and we've just completed an appraisal for the property. The property appraised at $475,000, so pretty close to the purchase price. And we currently have a survey in progress to divide the property. This will be on the warrant at annual town meeting. I think all property acquisitions require a 2/3 vote. And then we are slated to close by May 31st, assuming the project is approved. In terms of the proposed division of the property, basically what the plan is that the Stow Conservation Commission will acquire about 41 acres of the property for $225,000. That would be for open space, passive recreation, and water supply. Of that 225, the 22.5 would come from the Stow Conservation Trust. That's the deposit that's already been paid. And the remainder would come from CPA funds. The Community Preservation Committee has unanimously recommended in favor of that expenditure. About 8 to 9 acres of the property in the front of the property closest to Red Acre Road, so essentially everything that's below that yellow line toward Red Acre Road would be acquired by SMAHT for $225,000. That will come from funds that they already have on hand, and Mike can talk about that.
I am so sorry. I think I knew this before, but do you mind a quick orientation question?
Yep.
Where is Red Acre Road? Where, do you mind?
So Red Acre Road is being pointed out by Jim.
Well.
And then Tuttle Lane is the road that's up at the top of the property.
Okay.
And you can see the agricultural fields at the very top of the
Gotcha.
photograph are the Stow Community Gardens at Captain Sargent.
Now, are the little blocks that are along Red Acre Road, are those existing houses?
Those are existing houses. So just to do one more orientation, sorry Mike. This is the access strip that comes in from Red Acre Road. It's actually part of the property, it's not an easement. This was Marilyn Kunelius's house, which has been sold to a separate buyer, and these are the horse barns at the back of the property.
Okay, and where would the proposed affordable housing be located?
Approximately in the location of the horse barns.
Ah. All right, I think
we'll
I
come
knew
back to
that, but it's helpful to have that around.
We'll come back to that with some
sure.
sketches. So SMAHT has agreed that the affordable housing would be limited to up to 6 units on the property. That will be, it is actually written into the warrant article. It will also be embodied in an MOU that's being drafted and signed among the parties, Stow Conservation Trust, the Conservation Commission, and SMAHT. And the deed restrictions will also specify that there be no road access from Tuttle Lane. We purposefully designed the lot to give it 200 feet of frontage on Tuttle Lane to make it as conforming a lot as possible. But bringing a driveway into the buildable portion of the property from Tuttle Lane is a long and difficult road. And then the other thing that we've made sure to provide is that there would be a utility easement across the SMAHT parcel in the event that we wanted to bring a water line out from the conservation parcel to Red Acre Road. Probably the biggest question that I've been asked as we've been exploring this is why open space and housing? Why not just make this simpler and acquire the whole property for open space? That's what a lot of people have said to us. My response is really fivefold. One, that the idea of combining affordable housing and open space was part of the original 2002-2003 acquisition effort, and we wanted to try to be consistent with that. We think it's a great opportunity for the two entities, three really, to work together to meet a couple of different community needs and share the costs. This property is particularly well suited to housing. The frontage just off of Red Acre Road is already developed. It's level, it's suitable for housing. There is a tradition of affordable housing on Red Acre Road in the Red Acre Village area, and I think we have a couple residents who live there. And we've been fortunate to have incredible support from the neighbors, and that's not something that you always hear when it comes to an affordable housing project. We've really actively reached out to all of the immediate neighbors to the site. I think we've talked with all of them at this point. I don't want to say there's 100% support, but I think there is. And there'll be active support at town meeting. I think we can expect that.
Where is Red Acre Village? I'm sorry, I'm unfamiliar with
Red
that.
Acre Village is further up Red Acre Road.
Towards the town?
No, away from the center.
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
So do you know where the Red
Okay,
Acre
sorry,
Farm
sorry.
is?
I apologize.
No, it's quite here.
Do you know where the Red Acre Farm is, the
Yes.
horse farm? It's just north of that, on Red Acre Road.
Okay.
There's a whole series of small units that were built by Harriet Bird. Right,
I'm sorry for taking you out of your...
Yeah,
That's okay.
Ellen and Bob live there.
Yeah, Allan and Bob live there. It's a little village. Just a couple of shots that show you the existing buildings on the property, the stable.
They may still be up
The riding ring, they are still standing.
since when the picture was
And
taken.
the cottage. And then I'm going to hand it off to Mike to talk about the housing piece.
Sure. We're very excited to be working together with conservation entities and housing together. This has come up a number of times, and about why don't we work together better. And this is an ideal opportunity to show how this can work and set a model for future projects as may come up. Also, this is just to point out that I think the last three projects that we've brought to town meeting, someone has said, why doesn't somebody buy that property on Red Acre Road and put some affordable housing there? And these things were in the works, but you can't always talk about them publicly until you can. So these plans have been working in the background. Progress has been made for quite a while in these. So this is just looking at the obviously it was probably a couple days ago now with the snow, but looking in from the road and just at the site, and you saw the structures. The top left is looking from the site where the barns are approximately out to the road, and the one from the right is looking from the road into the site, and the other two are at the edge of this property. You see those houses that are sitting along the Red Acre Road. The fence kind of runs at the back part of that property. That's the right fence, right? Yeah, the back part of those properties. So it's just over that fence is where the barn is and where the potential housing might go. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So we've had an opportunity to do a number of concepts and to look at a few different ways that this might go, and these are all as usual at this stage of a process before you own the land. You're really talking about concepts and what could happen. We hope to get a lot of input from the town, from folks, not only from neighbors and abutters, but from people across the town about what this could look like. The history that we were talking about, where Red Acre Village is, Miss Bird donated a couple of plots, I think around 46 or 47, and began to build small houses for returning GIs, and other folks, including George Schultz, who was one of the first. The former Secretary of State was one of the first residents.
Our predecessor, one of our predecessors.
One of your predecessors as well, exactly. When he was teaching at MIT, he lived in one of these houses, and we have very prominent residents now who live in these houses, who lived in those houses down the road. So we see this as an opportunity to echo both the intent, but also potentially even the type of houses, because this was the style of house that the architect, Royal I can't think, where O'Berry Wills was in terms of bringing back the Cape-style house in the 40s, and how that's become quite prevalent since then. A lot of capes. Well, there was not anymore, but for quite a while there were a lot of capes being built. It was because of this resurgence, because of in large part because of what started here in Red Acre Village. So it's kind of historic. So this is just looking at a couple of different duplex. These would be 6 units in 3 buildings, for instance. Looking at setbacks, and those could be on either side of a central parking area or on just one side, depending on how that works. These are a number of concepts. You can see that with that central parking area, that's kind of the with the one where all on one side, where you have 3 units on one side. You can see what the existing structures are now in the dotted line area, in the existing cottage, the caretaker cottage that's there. So that would be one way of looking at this. This would again be 3, and duplexes tend to be the most cost-effective way of doing it. Single common wall units, singles foundation. This would be kind of another view of that without like a central parking area, but individual parking for each unit, but very similar siding, etc. A view of what that would look like in an elevation, in a kind of a cartoon drawing. The other, again, this is with the cottages on either side of a central area. And where is the 6? Oh, so this would, the other possibility would be, rather than doing 3 duplexes, would be 6 individual small units, similar to the houses that were built down the road in the 40s. And those could be any style, but there is an opportunity to echo kind of the history of the area. And but again, these are concepts, and we would look for there to be a fair amount of input from the town in terms of how exactly this would work out once, if the property were to be acquired. And again, just kind of looking at how those detached houses might look, salt box Cape type style, and again, New England, kind of classic New England architecture.
Okay.
So, is that it for? That's it for everything. Yep.
Well, thank you very much. I know that's a lot of work to do in a short period of time. First, let me open up the discussion to my colleagues on the board. Mr. Ryan.
It looks like a good plan. One of the things that I suppose I was looking at is the 6 units a negotiated number that might have come down. It almost looks like 8 would go in there very nicely, it would be symmetrical. So
It's the perfect number.
6 is?
Perfect number. The site could hold many units. The point is what's the right number that will be in balance the town needs and the impact on the local environment. So I don't say it's negotiated as much as it's right. It's a lot of talk has gone into what's the right size for the development there.
And that's it. I'm
Yep.
sometimes when I've had the conversations with him, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking you've got a great spot, and I'm just wondering if it would make sense to put 2 more in there or not. But I'm going to be beaten. So I'll be quiet now.
I think it
warrant
was the
says 6,
strong
right?
sense that was a number that would work financially, and also a number that would be acceptable and reasonable from the standpoint of the neighborhood, where we might actually have support as opposed to what we've had from other
Right,
projects.
and that's kind of, and I'm sympathetic to that standpoint, that you'd like to get the support
Get a project.
and get a project done, so it's,
I suppose anyone from town floor can move to vary the number that's in the warrant article. I don't expect it, but that's something for you to
It
consider.
would be complicated, I think. SMAHT technically doesn't need town meeting approval to expend its funds to purchase its portion. So the article is really authorization to purchase, authorization to divide it among the 2 different uses, and authorization to spend the CPA funds.
But you did put 6 in the...
We did put it in there because the folks in the neighborhood wanted that certainty.
Okay, I'm just talking process. I'm not militating in favor of any particular
There
outcome.
wouldn't be a CPC vote to support anything higher than 6. I don't know.
Good point.
I don't know.
I don't know that it's,
I don't know that it could be amended on town meeting floor.
Well, perhaps I was...
I don't think the partners would support it.
Perhaps I'm
Yeah.
engaging in fruitless speculation, and I withdraw the comment. But I was just trying to give this
Yeah.
line of thought.
That's what I asked, and, you know, and that's it. If you specifically did it to get support of the neighborhood, and you got it, you know, God bless, because, you know, that's what you've been striving to do, so.
Secretary McClark, you're our liaison from SMAHT. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
I just want to thank the collaboration between the parties here. We have 3 parties that really pitched in, really worked on this, and SMAHT and the Conservation Commission worked and met with the neighbors, and I think this is a very good outcome, and I'm very hopeful this will move forward.
All right, how about my colleagues to the left?
Council.
There's been a lot of outreach on this project, like Ingeborg has said, and I think it's really been, it's yielded some really good results.
All right. Now, as I said, I'm committed to do, is there anyone here in the audience tonight who would like to be heard on this proposal? Mr. Wilbur.
Just very briefly, representing the Stow Conservation Trust. The reason why the trust was willing to put the $22,500 down as a non-refundable deposit, as you can imagine, that's not a decision we made lightly. We did it because the overriding importance of the property from an open space perspective, and because the value, the asking price had finally come down to a level where we were convinced the property was going to be sold. The only prospective buyers over the last several years had been those who were seeking to develop a 40B. And we didn't want to be right back to where we were 15 years ago. The other thing I'd mention is that when I went to the board of directors of the trust to suggest a partnership of sorts with affordable housing interests, there was reluctance on that. And there was concern about potential confusion as to mission, and also potentially being tainted if there was another negative neighborhood reaction. And so really appreciative that SMAHT has heard that piece of it and been willing to be comfortable with a modest affordable housing component. We really hope that this is going to be a model that we can replicate elsewhere in instances where it might make sense to do it again.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, please. Yes.
How you doing? My name's Peter Christensen, and I live at 130 Red Acre Road. I'm an abutter of the project.
Thank you. Welcome.
I have the barns right out in my backyard. So it's a project that I care a lot about. And I just want to say that I'm very impressed with the partnership that has taken place here with different groups from the town and SMAHT and the CPC. I've been to a few meetings and had a lot of informal communication with people in the neighborhood, and I can't think of anybody who has expressed worry about this project. I think that the people have said 6 units is an appropriate number for that parcel, and they're really looking after the aquifer and the wetlands as well. So I think that I'd like to see it move forward. I think that the work that people have put in has taken years to get to this point, and it's really been fabulous amount of detail work that got us to this balance. So I hope it will succeed.
Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing your views. Madam Town Clerk?
Yeah, I just had a question about the next step. I know I'm jumping ahead. Once the town purchases it, who would be developing it and who would oversee it?
Ski?
So Thank you. The model would be similar to what SMAHT has done in the past, is that we would own the parcel, similar to the way we've had care and control of other parcels in the past, and we would put out an RFP and look for, with input from the town and from our partners in this case, put an RFP out that would be looking for a developer to complete the project. We wouldn't want to be developers ourselves in this case. I think we just, with an all-volunteer board, it's just not feasible to do that with no staff support. So it would make more sense for us to put an RFP out for the development aspect of it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Okay.
Any other opinions or comments or questions from the audience? Looking back to yes, Mr. Ryan, do you have?
One of the
follow-up?
things that seems quite different than, some of the last projects is that you're looking at, we're looking at buying the whole parcel. Part of it will definitely be earmarked for SMAHT, and I take it this is because you can put a project in there that makes sense and fits in with the neighborhood. In the past, you were looking for the town to buy it in case you decided to sell it or move, things like that.
I think if I understand what you're, in other projects, we've been doing chapter land, so we didn't have the opportunity to kind of plan out over a long period of time how that would work. And I think that without knowing in those situations that the work that has been done now, there wasn't an opportunity on a 120-day time to do the negotiation and the outreach and that type of stuff that we've had the chance to do now. So but we're still, in terms of, as opposed to asking for CPC funds to purchase that portion of the land, we are following the same ideas that by using SMAHT funds, if there was some reason for this project not to go forward, our hands would not be tied. There'd be recourse because of CPC funds were not used to buy the housing portion.
Well, CPC funds are being used to buy this.
Just the open space.
Just the open space. SMAHT funds are being used to buy the housing.
Okay.
And so are you going to divide it first and then buy it, or?
It'll be divided, and the plan will be recorded prior to the conveyance of the deed, and then one piece will go to conservation, one piece will go to SMAHT at the closing. That's the plan.
Okay.
And that's the part that I was missing, because I was thinking that it was, for some reason, I was still thinking it was all CPC money. But if for some reason this ended up going south on you, you can then sell off that piece and recoup your.
I wish it was not quite that simple because of the zoning issues, but
right.
There would be a glimmer of hope, as opposed to no hope at all. So.
Right, you could find
The
somebody.
CPC funds were used. It could only be resold for affordable housing, and if we can't do the affordable housing, no one else is likely to be able to do it. So if we use CPC funds to buy it for housing, it could only be used for affordable housing forever. So this allows us to have a little bit of a little bit of flexibility.
That's where I was confused.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry we didn't explain it.
You all set, Ms. Ryan?
I am.
Anyone else? Now, are you expecting any kind of a vote from us tonight on this?
That was part A, and there's part B.
The second bullet.
I would, but before we get to part B.
So as we wrap up Part A, I just also want to say, while I'm here, that I think huge credit is due to Marilyn Kunelius for being willing to enter into another agreement with the town, and trust that we can take this to town meeting and succeed, because she essentially tied up the property back in December. So I just want to thank her.
She's a very sympathetic character in this history.
It's been a long road for
I'm
her.
sure it was, I'm sure you worked well with her under all those considerations. But with respect to just the first bullet point, is there anything that you need to guard action on?
No, we wanted to give you an update and then set the stage for Part B.
Okay, well, why don't you take off on
We were just going to do Part B, but we thought you wouldn't want to talk about that unless you'd seen more about the project.
Of course.
So we could have just asked for your. So, as I think was written in the packet, the preparation comment, is that as part of the bylaws that were not part of actually accepting the statute, but the follow-on bylaws changes that kind of constrained, that, you know, where SMAHT recommended the town that constrain its powers. One of those provisions was for any purchase from a single source over $200,000, that a vote by the Board of Selectmen be required for SMAHT to be able to expend those funds. The reason about those originally was, first of all, is because we didn't have $200,000, so it seemed like I think we only had $120,000 at the time, so it seemed like a vast sum that would never come up. But indeed, it's now, and also the cost of a buildable lot was less than $200,000 at the time, so it was kind of set that we'd be able to buy a lot. Now, over those 15 years, the market has changed, it's gone up a little bit, so now this was appraised at $250, and we're going to be paying $225 for it. So, in order to expend those funds, we need a vote of the Board of Selectmen.
And that's, and just so that I'm clear, and then I'll take questions and comments, any expenditure by the trust to any one party.
Correct.
And that's in this case, the Ms. Kunelius.
Right.
Okay. Yes, did you have a thought or
I'm ready to
question?
make a motion.
We can take the motion.
So the
before we-
question the board has to affirm right now is, because of the way the bylaw is written, we have to be authorized the additional $25,000 above the 200. We have to take that vote.
So why don't you make the motion? But then we'll take questions and comments, because.
Do you really have questions on this?
Yes, yes, everyone will have,
Oh
yes,
my
everyone
God.
will have a chance to be heard.
So where's the little motion thingy then?
I wanted to vary the wording of the motion, because it doesn't say 225,000 from what.
What?
So I was going to suggest, I move, and make sure this is okay. I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the disbursement of $225,000 from SMAHT trust funds in order for SMAHT to join the Conservation Commission and Stow Conservation Trust in purchasing the Kunelius property.
All right, before I take any thoughts on that language, does our administrative assistant have it? Thank you. Ms. Hagan-Clark.
I'll second it.
Okay, you have no problems with the language. Do you guys have any problem with the language?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
it wouldn't come from anywhere else but trust funds.
It's more precise.
Yeah.
Okay. But, okay, as long as
I like being
everyone's
precise.
in agreement with the,
I like abstaining, sorry. Private joke.
unless there are any more, I must have this problem all the time. Unless there's any more discussion about the language of the motion, I'll now take some substantive questions or comments about the motion itself. Yes, Mr. Ryan?
Wouldn't this make more sense to be taking this vote after town meeting, after?
They can't, no.
No?
Sorry.
I'm just trying to figure it out right now.
Do you want to address that question, Ms. Hagan-Clark?
I think we need to support this before town meeting, that we, since we have to be the second voter, so to speak, I think town meeting, just as would appreciate the Board of Selectmen are going to authorize this and not just wait and see what happens. If it doesn't happen, the vote becomes null and void.
That's not what the vote says.
No, I think it,
One at a
I think it
time, one
is.
at a time, please.
well, they can't spend $225,000
It's
to
for-
join the Conservation Commission and Stow Conservation Trust in purchasing the Kunelius property unless town meeting approves it. So
Okay.
if the sentence ended there after trust funds, you'd be absolutely right. We'd just be authorizing them to spend $225 on whatever. But it's for a specific purpose, and that purpose only can occur if town meeting acts favorably.
Okay, that's it. I was just thinking that,
Yeah.
you know, once town meeting voted, it would essentially be pro forma because town meeting has then told us that this is what we're gonna do. And we would then release the funds because this is,
No, because there's no article on the town meeting warrant that is authorizing SMAHT to pay this money. There's only warrants authorizing CPC to pay their share of the money.
Right.
And only the board can do that authorization. Ms. Hagan-Clark, anything you'd like to add to this
No.
part of the discussion? Mr. Clerk, you've been, All right. Any other questions or
That
comments?
clarifies it for me.
All right. Then we have a motion, we have a second. We have the actual language of the motion. I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Well, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for working together.
Thank you.
And I'm
Thank
not, I'm not gonna be a big enough man not to chide you for your pessimism earlier on this.
You guys can split a company,
Thanks for coming.
Mr. Chair, before the members of SMAHT read, do we want to talk about have any questions, because they're in our packet about the two SMAHT articles?
Well, if they'd like to stay around, because what I was going to do with the consent of my colleagues is I was going to advance number 11 to the next item in here. Our board's administrative assistant and I worked very, very hard to try and make sure that people who are here on a specific item get heard as early in the agenda as possible. And that's why I think we have to move this up, because I didn't realize when we scheduled the agenda that Mr. Jones would be here on purpose. So yes, let's take a look at the town warrant articles now. With there's unanimous consent, and we can address those items that the members think that the board should take a vote on.
Thank you.
That make sense?
Makes sense to me.
All right. Where's Mark going?
You're going to have to eat that.
I'm sure that won't go begging. Now, as you know, it is the board's custom to take votes on specific items in the warrants articles in the town meeting to support or to support those articles and recommend those articles as FinCom does. I think it was originally done with the mistaken idea that, or perhaps not mistaken, but at least hopeful idea that the town at town meeting listens to the board and its recommendations. But having said that, and I'm not going to vary that custom and practice at this point, are there specific warrant articles, and I know I asked for this in writing so that if we needed people here to speak on them, but are there specific warrant articles that members think strongly the board should take a vote on? Mrs. Elby, you had some that you were kind enough to share with us in writing.
So the one I feel strongest about, obviously, is the budget, and I missed the last two meetings. I don't know if you actually took a position on the budget.
Yes, we voted to support the budget, or we voted in favor of the budget. We do function in your absences, so you're
good to hear. I'm always
you're all
concerned
set
about that. I thought we should take a position on the temporary marijuana moratorium. I don't expect it to be very controversial, but maybe we ought to take a. Do you want all these right now, Mr. Chairman, or one?
Why don't we take them one by one? But you know what? But you
Oh.
know what? It would be a kindness if we could address the ones where we have people here on. So the SMART one, and Mr. Jones has been exceedingly patient. So let's, if you don't mind, turn into those too.
Sure. I didn't mention a SMART one.
Oh, you did not mention the SMART one. I imagine saying Clark, you would.
I didn't mention it. They're here, but if no one has any questions about it, I have no need to discuss them personally.
Or do you want us to take a position on it, a recommended at town meeting?
If you're asking, yes, I would recommend that we approve both of them. But I didn't put those on the agenda, so.
Well, they're not really on the agenda. It was just our administrative assistant and I wanted to see if we could get out ahead. And as I told you today, with you especially, I'm going to be flexible. I think we will all be flexible. So do you want to make a motion? Do you want to make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve, support Articles 47 and 48. Unless you want me to separate that motion.
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about 47 and 48?
So 47 is changing the bylaw from the Board of Trustees consisting of 7 trustees to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen to 5 trustees. The reason being that we've had some difficulty getting quorum, and we also have difficulty getting members. So I should say SMAHT has that difficulty, so that's why this recommendation. And Mike, if I can ask Mike if he has anything to add to that.
This was at the recommendation and not on the recommendation, but on the advice of our town clerk, was that we've been functioning for the last 2 years with only 5 members, and before that we had our high water mark was 6 members for forever. I think we had 3 months where we had 7 members, but that was it in our 15-year history. So and with the way that bylaws are written, with 7 slots, even if only 5 of them are filled, we need 4 people to have a quorum, and it's just been very difficult at times, travel schedules and stuff. So by going to 5 seats, we'll be able to do business with 3. So.
All right, we'll take that one separately. Do you have currently 5 members?
33.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Did we have a second?
I think,
I'll
if you
second.
don't mind, I'd like to see the 2 of them separated.
Yes, and that's what we're doing. I did it unilaterally. All right. 47 is separated, and that's, the motion is now just for Article 47 to support it. Any further
second
questions or
it.
comments? It's already been seconded. Any
All right.
questions or comments? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That article on the warrant is supported, at least by us. Do you have another motion, Ms. Hageman Clark?
I make a motion to support, that the Board of Selectmen support Article 48.
Second? Is there a second? Is there a second? You?
Second for discussion.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Would you like to lead us through this one, Ms. Hageman Clark?
So as we just experienced in our last discussion, the Board of Selectmen had to approve the expenditure for over $200,000 for one party. I'm trying to get the right wording here. Anyway.
For a single party transaction.
For a single party
Jenny.
transaction, thank you. Given the cost of parcels these days, the SMAHT recommended that it be raised to $400,000.
Excuse, do you want to elaborate on the need for this?
I think it's already been explained,
Well, I'm just giving him an opportunity, but
but I'm trying.
Well, I kind of did a drive-by earlier on it, but essentially, the two operant issues, I think, are one is that at the time that these bylaws were written, there was absolutely no history of the trust or the management of the funds, and as more dollars have come into the trust, we've had the opportunity to be able to manage those funds. I think that we've done a reasonable job in terms of making sure that with the money that we've loaned out, we've been repaid, and it's probably not for us to say, but we've done a good job of managing the funds that we've had. And there have been a number of situations where, also with the cost of an affordable unit actually being, right now is with 2018 numbers, for a 3-bedroom is $208,000. So even buying an affordable house or selling an affordable house, in anything in that area, if we wanted to, for instance, the ASP program, where we would buy a house and that would be under foreclosure, even the affordable price is over $200,000 at this point. So, giving the point of having a housing trust is to allow the town more flexibility to spend dollars in pursuit or in advocacy of affordable housing. And with this $200,000 constraint on it I think unnecessarily limits the flexibility we would have going forward for. And what's the big, I think Chapter 61 lands, the big ones, there might be opportunities in the future where we want to use trust funds to do like pre-engineering, those type of things under Chapter 61, And this could be something that's that could be quite expensive if it was a large, a very large tract of land that's, a number of which are currently, under chapter. So, looking forward.
But if SMAHT was to acquire land, it would still require approval by town meeting? No? It would be straight?
No.
So you could expend...
Please.
Yes, Ms. Spear.
Hi.
Laura Spear?
Laura Spear, SMAHT. The whole intent of having an affordable housing trust, as defined by the state, was so that communities could actually take faster action in responding to opportunities. I heard earlier tonight you spent quite a bit of time talking about a letter for the NPDES permit and how you were going to meet so that you could review and approve it. So even having a $200,000 limit, if we were to find an opportunity, and I've heard this from members of the board, say there is inexpensive housing that you should jump on, we would then still have to be scheduled into one of your meetings to get approval. The average house price in Stow last year was $561,512. So even inexpensive houses are more than $200,000. This does give us the flexibility to respond to opportunities, use our money in a very wise way, but still be responsive without having to rely on your schedule. That's the whole intent of the town adopting the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw.
I see the point, yes.
Prince Papanos, Steve's Smart. The 200,000 initially was a self-imposed figure that we put on ourselves because we had no history as a trust. So, and it was also pre-2008 when prices were really a lot lower. So, I mean, we could have put 500,000 back then and probably would have gotten it approved, but we put that restriction on ourselves. So now we're just, we think we've done a pretty good job managing the trust, and now we're coming to try and raise that figure.
I'm sure, do other towns in this area have similar caps?
No.
No, in fact, most communities that adopted an affordable housing trust do not set a cap at all. We did that.
The statute doesn't.
No, the statute has no cap. Other communities do not have a cap at all. So we're not saying let's do away with the cap. We're just saying let's raise it so that we can still be responsive.
Okay. Ski?
Well, just that when the town originally accepted the statute and created the trust, it created the language, it accepted language that was in the statute where there were essentially no constraints. And one of the things that, when we were putting our own governance in place, was that although the folks that were sitting around the table then, we said, well, yeah, we're all good people, but we don't know who's going to be sitting here in 20 years. So we wanted to put some constraints. Yeah, we were, yeah, right.
Yeah,
it turns out 15 years later, there's still many of the same people sitting around the table, but that notwithstanding, the idea was that we wanted to set a precedent for how that statute applied to a town like Stow. And the idea was some sort of cap, and that we would want to have an advisory, we would want the advice of the FinCom, we would want the advice of the Board of Selectmen. And $200,000, as I said earlier, seemed like an exorbitant sum, but now it's not so exorbitant. Actually, affordable houses cost more than that. So even to buy a house that's in foreclosure was going to cost more than that. It just seems that to achieve the goals that we originally set out, we just need a little bit more room to do that.
Mrs. Halvey.
I feel conflicted about this. On the one hand, I understand everything you're saying, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think from the perspective of increasing our stock of affordable housing, this is what state law anticipated. And it anticipated quick action by an affordable housing trust without approval by a Board of Selectmen or a town meeting. For that reason, I anticipate voting in favor of it on the floor. I am having a hard time as a selectman, though, being in favor of taking things away from town meeting. And on the one hand, I can see how buying existing housing stock, a house that's in foreclosure or maybe an easement on a house, makes sense. And we have asked, why can't there be, people have asked, why can't there be quick action on that kind of thing? The nightmare scenario, the bad scenario, would be a project like Boxborough Road comes up. and SMAHT just comes in and buys it. No town meeting, no Board of Selectmen.
Chapter land, which it needs, so any chapter land would need.
Let's say it's not
would need the
chapter
town.
land.
Yeah, but it's not a chapter land, for instance, yes.
Right, but let's say it's a project that's not
Yep.
the same kind of thing. A parcel comes up in the middle of a neighborhood. The neighbors don't really know anything about it, and all of a sudden SMART comes in, which is, let's face it, that's what state law anticipates you ought to be able to do. And from an affordable housing perspective, it makes complete sense. But from an overall community perspective, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think it would have been a bad thing to happen in that particular instance. And Laura?
Using that as an example, you still would not go to town meeting. We would just come to the Board of Selectmen to get approval.
Right.
So it still would not have town meeting involvement whatsoever. All we're saying is, can we raise the cap a little bit to give us a little more flexibility for these smaller opportunities? Chapter 61 land is a completely different story.
No, I know that.
That has implications where
But
you
maybe
have to have town meeting.
well, so maybe, but if this Boxborough-like parcel cost 400,000 or less, you wouldn't need to come to the Board of Selectmen, right?
Correct.
And that's what I'm afraid of. And where I'm conflicted is I'm not so sure 400 is really enough to buy and construct, to buy a parcel and construct a house.
It's not. It's enough to buy a parcel.
Buy a parcel.
Well, I've always heard a parcel's 200 and construction's 200.
But they wouldn't be paying it to two, they'd be paying it to two people. The money would go to one party to buy the parcel, and then another party to build it. So that it would be two votes from SMART of $200,000 each. Am I understanding that correctly?
For instance.
But neither one of them having to be approved by anybody else.
No, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But do you see what I'm saying?
But that's what the town voted for when it adopted the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw.
I don't think, after the experiences we've had in the past several years, I don't think the remedy is less dialogue on this issue. And, well, when I say less dialogue, I mean skipping approval by anybody other than SMART. I don't think, as bad as those town meetings, and they had a bad result, in my opinion, but the dialogue was healthy. And I personally, as a selectman, am having a hard time saying that the Board of Selectmen should be in favor of taking away from town meeting a decision on this.
It's not taking away from town meeting.
You're not.
It's not. Taking it away from us.
Correct.
Yeah. Or taking it away from any public entity.
We are a public entity as well, and our meetings are open to the public. So I don't see how we're doing anything that's not transparent to the town.
No, transparent, but let's face it, if something like this Boxborough Road parcel comes up, and neighbors are surprised, and all of a sudden SMART just decided to buy a parcel and construct a house, who are they going to go complain to? SMART and the Board of Selectmen.
Well, in that example, to buy the parcel, yes, we could do that. To construct the house, we would need all the proper permits and whatnot that anybody else constructing a house would do, whether it's an affordable house or a market rate house. Everybody has to go through the same process.
Not the exact same one, but yeah.
Well, give or take. So
The appropriate process for that.
yeah, so you know, I don't understand why that would be such a grave concern for you.
Well, okay, let's open this up. Mr. Ryan, you had some thoughts or comments or questions?
Yeah, I had some thoughts on this. I suppose one question is, have there been any opportunities that you've missed because of it? I'm thinking that, hey, it was a pretty clean process. You came, you explained, you got your vote. What type of scenario do you envision that would preclude you from scheduling to come before us in 2 weeks?
The one that, the foreclosure is the one that oftentimes there's there's a clock ticking on foreclosure issues. And now that the affordable price is over $200,000 for a three-bedroom unit, we would, even to buy an affordable unit to preserve it, what the situation for the affordability safeguard program is to buy a foreclosed house and hold it until an eligible buyer can be found. Because there's only a 90-day window for a bank, for instance, that forecloses. There's only 90 days that it has to wait for a buyer, or else then offer it to the town, or in this case, it would be to SMAHT. And we have those, so we have funds put aside. We have almost $425,000, I think, put aside in that program for the CPC funds to respond to
For 2 units.
For 2 units, obviously, but that was, those funds are specifically there for that program, and because the price has gone up over $200,000, that was something that was, before it was 180, last year it was 185,000, so we wouldn't need that approval. Now all of a sudden, just because the price has gone up, now we're gonna need to approval to use to administer a program that has already been approved by town meeting, approved by CPC, and is in place. So
why not raise the limit to 250 that you need approval? And then come back in, 2, 3, 5 years and say, now we gotta go to 300?
Well, first of all, bylaws are not that, it's not that easy to change bylaws. And I don't know, I would imagine that the town clerk would not be terribly interested in every 3 years. We say, oh, let's raise it up another 50,000. The idea is that it's a high bar to change the bylaw, and the idea is that in the last 15 years, the idea was that we don't want to change this every couple of years, and bylaws take 2/3 of a town meeting vote. The idea was to bump it up so that we wouldn't have to come back in 5 years, that it would last another 15 years. So, and give us the flexibility that the original statute intended.
Mr. Clerk, you have some thoughts on it?
Given Ms. Spear's comments, that we're the only guys in town that do this at all, I think we're arguing about nothing here. Other communities with affordable housing trusts wouldn't be having this debate tonight, because there is no limit. I'd like to bring this to a vote.
Well, I hear your point, Mr. Clerk, but there's some meritorious arguments that have been made tonight on both sides of this. I don't want to cut off anyone. Also, Mr. Jones, you had a thought?
I'd just like to point out that your thoughtful and earnest developer who would like to create a 40B project is able to act quite promptly, and sometimes that's the competition for an organization like SMAHT. And foreclosure.
The what? I'm sorry.
Potential developer.
Potential developer is
Oh.
able to act quite promptly, and they're actually the competition with SMAHT for impaired properties that may become available. And you don't want to necessarily impair their ability to compete with a developer who's going to put in a 40B, which is exactly what SMAHT has to do for their affordable housing. You want to give them equal footing to act promptly if there's some kind of urgency.
All right, unless there's something new on this topic?
No.
Yes.
I suppose I kind of agree with Jim on some of it, all right? I might be willing to vote yes on a compromise of 300,000, something like that. But I probably will vote no on 400,000 because I haven't seen any, I understand what you're saying, Mike, that you can't buy a place out of foreclosure, which I think you should be able to do. I support that. I've suggested you do it. I don't think we have we yet?
We haven't had to.
How many have
we? We have 3 units that are currently under foreclosure that
we
may we may end up buying. It's a 6 to 12 month process. So,
but the thing is that I suppose that's my point, that if you needed more than 200,000, or let's say we compromised and we changed it to 300,000, if you needed more than 3, you could come to us and say, we're going to need more than 3, and this is the reason, and then that takes, I'm saying it gives the board a second look at the apple. The board here, we approve it. We approved it today. We understand what you guys are trying to do. We support it, but I probably wouldn't go to 400. I'm just.
All right, is there anything to be said on that?
Just, I'm failing to understand why there's a need to constrain the flexibility of an organization that was built for flexibility.
All right, I think we're getting circular at this
Right.
point. The motion that's on the table is to support the warrant article raising the single-party cumulative expenditure of SMART to $400,000. It's not at a lesser amount, I suppose, and I'm pretty sure on this one, a lesser amount could be moved to town floor, but that's not what's before us right now. Do you have?
I just wanted to say, I don't know that the Board of Selectmen should amend what is going to be published. That I think if this discussion has to be held, it should be held at the town floor and not. We shouldn't dictate to the town, limit this discussion when SMART will be making a presentation at that time.
Okay, but I think I was just saying that. Right now, you can vote whatever way you want at town floor. You can make whatever amendments you want on town floor.
But I don't want to limit what the public can see on town floor.
No, we wouldn't be able to do that either. This is just to support this.
Right.
Yeah, we can't amend it to
We can't amend it.
No, and I wasn't suggesting we do
I
that.
just think it's confusing if we start throwing out, let's do 250, let's do 300, let's do 400. I just think it's
Well,
unnecessary.
unfortunately, we don't have to worry about that confusion because we're only going to be voting on whether to support Article 48 as it's now written. Okay? So, having said that, unless there's really new discussion or really new comments, then I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. You got the support of the board for what it's worth. It's a different matter on town floor.
You're not gonna ask for nays?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? You always jibe me for asking for nays, but yes, in this case, I really should. Nays?
Nay.
3-2. And thank you very much. But that doesn't bind anyone here on town floor either. We'll hear the arguments there as well.
And that's why I gave you my opinion. I think if you put 300 forward, I'd probably vote yes. But
You want them to, you want SMART to take action, but now you're micromanaging.
Well, I'll tell you what, the vote's been held, you've got it, let's move on.
It's done. Deal's done.
It's not fair to Mr. Jones, who came here on a very small little item.
Yeah, well, let's do that.
Yeah.
Cupcake?
I'm staying here.
Yeah.
I'm staying here to support Mark.
I'll be here. I'm seeing you.
Now, Mr. Jones, why don't you come forward? Mr. Mark Jones, a school committee member, one of them. And there was a question on the article regarding a stabilization fund to be created by the school committee. What number is that?
33, I think.
33. And Mr. Salve wanted more information on that, and I suggested that Mr. Jones contact him, but Mr. Jones has kindly and as usual diligently agreed to come before us and explain to all of us, as he once did to me individually about a month ago, what this warrant... Sorry, is there anything I can help you with?
I can't find 33. This is what you sent, and I printed it out.
I think it's been renumbered.
We'll share.
Okay.
So I might have looked at a different version.
No, it's 33.
Maybe I got a different version from the selectmen's office.
I think it's right after the capital chart.
Yeah. Well, whatever article. It's the article to establish a stabilization fund for the Neshoba Regional School District. Let's leave it like that.
Sure.
And why don't you explain to us the need... Why don't you explain to us the need for that, Mr. Jones?
So the motivation is to create a fund that could be accumulating money for two purposes. Eventually, the athletic field, which you may recall, the towns voted a bond to
The high school.
completely renovate and create a new. So it was artificial turf, and I believe also the track got resurfaced or taken down and resurfaced, and there may have been some miscellaneous things like stands for people. And the school committee desires to have a place where money can be accumulated and possibly avoid a future bond when the capital expense comes due for replacing the artificial turf and perhaps as needed the track at some future date. Right now, we have a revolving fund which has more than $100,000, which is accumulated from admission fees and rentals And the school committee could use that money for other athletic purposes besides capital expenses. And we would like to make an opportunity to move funds from that revolving fund to the stabilization fund, as well as to put a line item in the budget for some more modest amount to accumulate into the stabilization fund.
All right, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you said the revolving fund consisted of admission fees and rental fees?
We're correct.
What admission fees, what rental fees?
Football, athletic events, and likewise rental of the athletic
Okay, yeah, I thought I wanted to be clear on that.
So
admission fees, tickets to see the football game.
Right, and
Okay.
so that's available to be used for any athletic purpose. And what we're trying to do is have far-sighted financial planning so that we might be able to avoid a future bond, or at least reduce the amount of a future bond when the capital expense will arrive. And in part, we want to bind future school committees by, if we set aside money, that it requires a visible and public discussion to remove the money for expending it. And so if we dedicate money for a particular purpose, then we know that that purpose will be implemented as time passes.
Mr. Salvi, you were the one who originally had the question, so I'll see if you've been satisfied first.
Well, I think it sounds like a great idea. I'm confused about it, though. Why a stabilization fund just for this one purpose? Is it because there's a dedicated revenue stream? You know, why not a stabilization fund for science labs or books or something like that?
Could do that for science labs. It's a capital thing. Can't do it for books. They're not capital items, and we have to use stabilization funds for capital or bond items.
But why a special stabilization fund? Doesn't
Well,
the
the
district
school
already
committee
have?
tried to voted, or actually had on their agenda to have two stabilization funds. One, an all-encompassing general stabilization fund, such as the town has. So we have one stabilization fund at the town, which can be drawn upon for any capital purpose. The school, the field stabilization fund was because there's a known revenue source, and also because there's some history about that particular bond, especially in relation to the subsequent bond that got voted down, and there's a desire to quiet future complaints about that particular expenditure in the future. And so it turned out that the school committee felt uncomfortable voting for both, at least some members, and felt that if they brought both stabilization funds to the towns, they'd probably lose both of them in town meetings. And so they went for the single, at least some members voted for the single dedicated fund. And perhaps in some subsequent year, there might be a general stabilization fund that would come forward to the towns.
Mr. Clerk, thank you for your patience.
As your representative to the school committee, I was there for that discussion. I also remember the angst that we all had at the time that came before us, before the attention of the three towns, in a very hurried manner. Either vote to support it, or you vote against it, or you are in favor of it. And there was considerable discussion among previous school committee and, I believe, the administration to do exactly what the school committee now is saying we should be doing, looking forward to this, particularly because it was such a hot-button item. It's a 20-year bond, and I think they said the field had a 19-year life, and there was discussion at the time. We're going to be asked to be paying for a dead horse here before we even paid off the bond. And there was a lot of discussion then, in meetings I was attending back in those older days, that we will have a great opportunity to get more revenue because of this new field, not just for our own use, but by rentals to outside organizations, which has in fact happened. It's a very busy place. They're generating a lot of revenue. I see ultimate good sense in saying, good job, go do it. And not only should, if I were on the school committee, would be supporting the existing funds in the revolving fund, but trying to dedicate future ticket sales at least to build that trust, build that stabilization fund, so that 14 years from now, or whatever it is.
I think 28 2028 is when the
So
bond expires.
that's not, all of a sudden, we're halfway there. So hopefully we will have, if not the entire, I would have liked to have seen this done earlier, but you can't rewrite history. So
That's why it caught my eye. It struck me as something responsive to what happened several years ago.
it is, and I think the current school committee is to be complimented on recognizing that and moving. Perhaps they didn't explain it as well as they might have in presenting it to the towns, but that's what's behind it, and I heartily support it.
Well, thank you for that historical account. Any further questions or comments?
I've kind of got a slightly different view on it. I look at it as one of the types of things that we have had an aversion to historically here, which is a revolving fund for a specific purpose. You've got income from the ambulance, you put it aside, you can only spend it for the ambulance. We've historically decided not to do that.
I think they already have a revolving fund.
One at a
I'm
time,
sorry.
please.
I'm looking at where's the money going to come from, right? We're going to be paying into that fund from ourselves for the next 15, 20 years. Because that money has to come from somewhere, all right? Now, you can say it's coming from ticket sales, but using the ticket sales money somewhere else means that we don't necessarily have to be paying for other things, all right? But the long part of it too is that when we've been paying, we as a district have been paying into this for, let's say, the next 20 years, the town then doesn't have a say whether the school district gets to replace the field or not. They just do it because they've taken our money over the last 20 years because they say they're going to do a new field, whether we want it or not. And I agree with some of what Don's been saying, that, hey, it's kind of forward-looking, but I expect the school district to be planning on replacing this at some point, but not taxing us for the next 20 years so that they can put the money into it.
Mr. Jones, do you have anything that can address Mr. Ryan's concerns?
There are two sources of funds. One is revolving funds for rentals and sales, and then the second source would be general funds, meaning it would be a line item in the budget that goes to the towns.
When you say source for what?
Source for funds that would go into the stabilization fund. So the school committee has control over the revolving funds and could at any time vote to allocate money from a revolving fund to the stabilization fund. Money that might come from the towns, though, would have to be voted in the annual budget and approved by the town meetings. And then from that line item, it could go into the stabilization fund to accumulate. So not all money will be tax money that's arriving into the stabilization fund if it operates as intended.
But I'm looking at it that, okay, you decide to use the ticket sales to fund this stabilization fund.
Right.
Now that 100,000, and let's call it 100 grand. So you're going to put that 100,000 into the stabilization fund. Now that money isn't available for you guys to spend on something else, so now we have to pay for it out of our operating budget.
Maybe. The revolving fund had been accumulating money in anticipation of this very plan to basically accumulate money for future track or rehabilitation of the track as time passes. And we've seen that revolving fund go down as we become more careful with our budget and have less and less surplus as we figure out how to reduce the annual surplus in the budget. So I am, and perhaps other members of the school committee are awake to the fact that that revolving fund can disappear without any dedication towards capital expenditures. So this is a means to actually dedicate those funds so that they do not get used for other athletic purposes. And so that when the time for big capital expense to happen, maybe it's $500,000, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, we are in a position to actually go ahead and act on the need.
So I'll just say, I don't intend to make a motion on this. I appreciate this discussion. I appreciate this. This has helped me. I generally support it, but I don't feel like I understand it enough. And also, I think Mr. Ryan makes some good points. I personally don't feel like it's something I expect the Board of Selectmen to support. I wish you a lot of luck with it. But I don't feel like I understand it enough to think the Board of Selectmen should support this.
Well, there's still 4 other members who could make a
Right.
motion. So unless, maybe it's a good idea before we discuss this anymore to see if there is a motion and a second to support this article.
Is it Article 33?
Article
I
33.
move we support Article 33.
Do we have a second?
Support our, the efforts of our school committee that.
One second. We don't have to, we just have to have the motion to support Article 33. Do you have a question or a second?
I seconded already.
I didn't hear that,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Thank you.
And
All right,
then
now
I
we have a
have-
motion, a second, now we have,
I have a question also.
well, we're going to have now further discussion and further questions. Please.
So, Mark, I understand, I've listened to this discussion. It sounds like there have been, is there sort of like a master plan of needs for the school? And the school's identified that the track is up and coming, and so they're being proactive about setting aside dedicated funds for it to minimize future need for town appropriations. Is that what I understand?
That's the general plan. I can't say that we have a master plan, but it's
So why did this
basically
project?
to lay this opportunity in place so that we can make a dedicated fund. And perhaps if you turn around the perspective, what if someone asks us in 8 years or 10 years, why didn't you plan ahead for this?
And you know you
And
will
this
get that
is the
question.
planning ahead for this, when that capital expense arrives.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up.
Please, continue.
So, does the school anticipate the need for this within a certain period of time?
I'm told that the lifetime of these artificial fields
You
is
said
somewhere in the
19.
vicinity of 15 years, more or less,
And-
depending on how you
And you
treat
said
it.
it's now at 19 or 20?
And it's about 5 years old right now.
Oh, okay. So this is 15 years out.
10 to 15 years, more or less. So we know that this is coming,
Okay, thank you.
and it'd be nice to have
That's all my
something in
questions.
place for that moment.
Anyone else with questions? Any other discussion?
I suppose one thing, I'm happy not voting on it right now, and I don't know where Mr. Burke stands, but I think Mr. Salvi and I may vote no.
Well,
I'm
we'll
just-
get a vote in a second.
But I'm just saying, do you want to leave it? I may rethink my position later on and be willing to support it after I think about it some more. But at this point, I'm going to say no, so do you want to risk a no vote, or would you rather just let it lie for right now?
Well, I mean, that's,
It seems a no vote would be just not a recommendation, so.
Yeah, Mr. Salvi.
I said before that I didn't feel strongly enough about it to make the motion. Then a motion was made by somebody else. That being the case, I probably will vote in favor of it, just from general fiscal prudence principles. I still am a little uneasy about it. I don't feel like I completely understand it, but a motion having been made, I'd rather vote yes than no.
Okay. So,
And since you were so kind enough to express an interest in how I would vote on this, maybe I'll just give you my thoughts. And I am not as close to this particular matter as our clerk, and we thank him very much for following the school committee's deliberations in these and all other matters, especially with an eye to the finances. I hear your points, Mr. Ryan, about worrying about where this money might end up. On the other hand, there's no way of binding the hands of the school committee in the future. They can play games with the stabilization funds, or they can play games with the revolving funds. I'm not saying they would, of course, but any kind of concerns that you can dream up there's ways to defeat anything that we're trying to do in the way of imposing fiscal discipline on the school committee in the future, this far ahead. The only thing we can do is to continue to support strong financial measures and accounting on the part of the school committee, as they have been so adept at doing in the past few years. Support good candidates for school committee who will keep in mind the town finances as well as the educational needs of the students. And maybe little measures like this that would perhaps at least set a benchmark or a goalpost for establishing a pay-as-you-go mentality and approach to financing school funding. Maybe you didn't want that much of an answer to my question.
What you
but-
did is you just reinforced my position, because what you said was that no matter what we do, the school committee's gonna do what they wanna do, so we can put all this money in there, and they're gonna spend it whatever way they want, then still come back and ask for more.
The terms of the stabilization fund is that it can only be spent on the athletic field, and it takes a two-thirds vote to do
Two-thirds
it. So
vote,
that's much more visible and public than a revolving fund expenditure.
Yes, and perhaps I didn't explain it, but that's the whole idea of stabilization funds. Sorry, but I didn't expect to be persuasive, I just expected to be expository. So, seeing that, I think, now that you've heard from me, God help us, you're ready for a vote? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Please note there is a nay.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Jones, for
Thank you,
coming
Mark.
here, for staying so late. We appreciate it. And it was an excellent question that was asked by our colleague, Mr. Salvi. You might want to be ready to explain this to the
I'm
members.
expecting we'll have a discussion at town meeting.
And you might want to be ready for that discussion.
Actually, I've also told town council to be prepared to respond to questions too.
I'm
Since
sure
the
that's your
intricacies,
job.
people may-
It's my town council
Just said
work,
you might
but
want to
okay.
read the statute.
But okay, it's a heads up that you might need to explain things to your fellow residents at town meeting. Good luck, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thanks, Mark.
We were right behind.
Thank you, Mark.
BFD. Now, with the understanding and with the appreciation that we've been keeping people here, I would like to ask my colleagues their thoughts. The matters of discussion and vote for 8, 9, 10, we've already, have we done all the 11? Have we done every warrant article that everyone wants to take a position on? I should have asked that first.
Well,
Mr. Sally?
I mentioned 3 others, but I'm losing.
You losing steam?
Well,
Can I make 2? Let's pare it down to 2. I do think we should take a position on the temporary marijuana moratorium.
I'll make a motion that we support the temporary marijuana article number
I think it's 54.
54.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or comment? Or is that pretty much understood?
Simply an extension.
Extension of 6 weeks of,
As I said earlier.
As you said earlier?
Yeah, one of my chair's comments when we were announcing the public hearing on this
You mean another meeting?
no, tonight.
tonight.
All right, sorry. So
Well,
it's
nobody
just
pays attention to me.
extending it, and tell me again, I know, and I listened to the tape, tell me again why we need an extension. I know, I just need to understand it again.
And
Because the regs are out, is my understanding.
Draft regs.
the draft regs. And what we decided is that we were going to put the questions about whether or not we were going to allow recreational or institutional sale of marijuana, whether we were going to allow on-site use. We wanted to put that, if I recall the discussion, and please, Madam Town Clerk, speak up this time. We wanted to put that on for the widest possible vote, and that would be at the November general election.
So
We would have the most
2 election
participation.
thing. Right.
And so therefore, that might have been cutting it very close. So So we needed to kick it out just, I think it was 30 days, 45 days, just so that we could get that in and still have our special town meeting in the fall. Does that answer your question? Did I state that correctly, Madam Town Clerk? So does that answer your question?
What is does the planning board, they're in favor of this?
Yes.
Yes.
Just sponsor it.
Okay, then I will
They're
defer to
sponsored.
them.
Okay. Then I will now, if there are no further questions or comments, I will now take a vote. All those in favor of Article 54, the moratorium on marijuana extension, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Yes.
57. You have another one, Mr. Salvi.
My last one, Article 43, the funds for design of renovations to the town hall. I think it might get a lot of questions based on some discussions we had at capital planning. Craig's talked about this to us, about this with us several times. The idea is to make to design structural repairs. I think part of the building is sagging. One of the walls is starting to cave in. Is to fix things like that. The nature of the questions that are probably going to come up, well, you don't know what you're going to do with town hall, all which is true, but we know we're going to keep it. Town hall isn't a building we're going to get rid of anytime soon. And these are the sorts of repairs that we're going to have to do no matter what kind of use we put it to. So
I couldn't not spend $175,000 just to see if we could keep it.
Right.
If that made sense. All right. Do you want to make a motion, Mr. Salvi?
I'll move that the board support, I believe it's Article 43, design funds for the town hall renovation.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Comment or questions?
Comments. The $175,000 is just for design.
Correct.
All right? It presupposes a cost to do structural repairs on I'm not sure of the size of the building, but it sure isn't more than 2 houses worth. Granted, it's an antique, but you're talking $1.75 million for the total project. That seems insane to me.
I think it presupposes renovation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you're paying to identify and define a scope of services. So it's full design development. They pegged it at 10% of the total cost of renovation based on Kafey, who was the architect, on a recent reservation of a town hall, and they relied on the architect,
Wendell from the library.
Of the current library, and they pegged it at those two for recent renovations of the town hall. So this is from conceptual through schematic and design development, presupposing the structural repairs that are needed and anything else for renovations of the building. So that's 10% of the total of what they got from the 2 architects for renovation. Structural repairs and renovations of a similarly sized town hall, recently 2 projects that they did. So it's an estimate.
I apologize.
And you don't have to, and just to be, well, I'm trying to help here.
No, I know, I'm
So
sorry for interrupting.
What it would do is you don't have to spend it all. What you're gonna do is go out and hire an architect, a firm through an RFP. Part of it's gonna be an existing conditions report, like we've done on the others. And then with that, you're gonna be able to decide what it is you wanna do with the building. So you go through the entire design development for some renovation. And you'll vote against it if you don't wanna do any renovations for the building, just restore the structure, but you'll have the opportunity to do that. But rather than piecemeal this, it gives you an opportunity to get one architect, an engineering firm on board, which is what we did, past the feasibility stage on those other buildings. So it's following the exact same procedure and process, and we estimated a cost, once we got to conceptual, on total project cost. But you'll only spend what you need to spend of that amount once you decide what it is you want to do with it. So it's not as though you're assuming you'll spend all of the $175,000. So let's say you pegged it at $1 million. You're only saving 50 grand, but if you wanted to renovate, you wouldn't have the opportunity to even go through the design development for that.
Mr. Town Administrator, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but our town clerk is
That's
anxiously
everything.
waving her hands, and
No,
I
I
wanted
was
to make
just,
sure.
I was just gonna reiterate and be supportive, and of course, the renovation of the historic building at historic standards, thank you, is gonna be a little bit more costly in some cases.
What, no vinyl windows?
No, excuse me, and no vinyl gutters.
Okay, let's, it's getting late, let's see if we can keep on track here and on topic. Is there any further discussion on this? We have a motion, a second?
I think I made a motion.
Yes.
We have a motion, a second from
Yes.
Mr. Salve and the clerk. I would just add, and very briefly, is the Finance Committee got the same sticker shock that you did, Mr. Ryan. They played it out to 10, played it out as 10%, and that's a huge number. I think I remarked upon that to the town administrator, that's a big number. But he explained the process, he explained why it's necessary to expend this money now rather than later in little drips and drabs. And quite frankly, the Finance Committee, even with the same sticker shock, recommended it. And I take it Mr. Salve, Capital Planning is behind this as well.
Yes, and actually, our conversation there is what prompted me to, we had a good conversation. The Finance Committee rep was in favor of it after some initial reluctance, for all the reasons we've discussed.
Okay, I don't think, is there any further burning questions or comments? Then let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Hey, you know what?
Mr. Clerk.
I'll take the, I don't want to be a naysayer all the
Mr.
time.
Chairman,
You are, of course not, Mr. Ryan.
one of the articles that Mr. Salve brought up, that it's getting late, but I would like to bring up is Article 57, the Lake Boone Dam. This is a matter, as Jim correctly noted, it may not be controversial, but since we have some folks down there that ask perennial questions that seem to us trivial, but they take up time at town meeting, I think there would be some explanation about the value of, not only the value, but the requirement that this project go forward. And I would like to see us as valuing Lake Boone, that it continue to be a Lake Boone, and that the state doesn't come in for lack of our action of taking some responsibility financially for this now, orders us to drain the lake while they think about all of that. I think.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, with that in
So
mind, would
with
you like
that
to make a motion?
with that, I would move that we support Article 57.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Ryan's got the second. All right, I think in making his motion, our clerk was very clear about what would support this, and my goodness, I can't.
Call it.
My goodness, $29,000 the town needs to hear from us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, and in view of the lateness of the hour, I assume we're all done with the town warrant articles. I mean, we could always take one up, quite frankly, just before town meeting, if somebody came up with it, and a real reason why we couldn't get to it tonight. I would suggest to my colleagues that if we went to the town administrator's report, he's really not necessary, his input, although always welcome, is not necessary on items 8 through 10. So we could have his town administrator's report, and he could be on his way to the friendly town of Allan. Is that registering, Mr. Town Administrator?
I'm perfectly fine with that decision.
Would you like to rejoin us? You're not blocking the screen anymore.
Wherever you want to, I think the cupcakes have made our town administrator loopy.
You want to blame it on that?
It's not what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, I apologize.
So my first comments relate to Standard & Poor's, which I think I've gone through with you. You have a copy of it. It's pretty self-explanatory. The second piece, just to give you a general outline, I think I've mentioned it to you folks in the past, that we continue to have the ongoing MCAD case that relates to a special part-time police officer. After 7 years, we've finally made an appearance before one member of the MCAD, not the entire commission now. And we've been providing testimony for the last couple of weeks. And I think because I don't whine much, but when I whine real good. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So they're gonna come up here next Tuesday.
They, the same hearing officer?
Yes. And so, I'm scheduled to give testimony, and there's one or two others, so hopefully, it will occur. I mean, part of you get a witness list, as you know, it's phony when they give it to you, no matter what the lawyer says. And so, we were supposed to get through, twice the number of witnesses we actually got through, no surprise there, they only worked from 10 to 4. We're an hour for lunch, so we're sending a number of people down here on our dime from the police department, sitting in here sequestered, and not even for a whole day, and not even being heard, and without even a stifled yawn from these folks down there. Well, I've got some things to say after the end of this to some people that might be in a position to do something, because it's if you want to lose all faith in government, take a look at what's going on in some of these places, and nothing gets done about it. So 7 years now, we're just on a simple part-time case. Getting hurt.
We understand your frustration, Mr. Town Administrator.
And then finally, I just had comments on the budget. Everybody's in alignment now with the budget that was recommended. So I think we've done our job for this meeting.
We understand perfectly why you couldn't make it our last meeting, and we hope we made it easier. Yes?
Just one parting comment on that. This is their standard procedure, is an individual hearing officer hears it and then recommends to the full commission their findings? Is that the way it works?
That's what they're telling us, but here's part of the issue, is that they make it up as they go along. I mean, it's shocking. They don't have a file, they lost it, the investigative file, yet they continue. They, in fact, spent some time representing the person themselves, because he's between lawyers.
We may, this might prejudice the hearing if you complain too vociferously, but just a word to the wise, but we understand.
That would be just them. Tell the truth and bad things happen to you. It's pathetic. Anyway.
We appreciate your sticking with it, believe us.
Well, you don't know the half of it, is what I'm saying.
I know. Another day for the other half.
Yep. Is there anything else?
No, do you get enough cupcakes?
Thank you.
Have a good night, safe trip. All right, we have some rather routine matters that nobody will be appearing before us on, so I think we can get to that. First is discussion and vote on the appointment to the Stow Cultural Council.
Would you like a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course, Mr. Ryan.
I move that the Board of Selectmen reappoint Jennifer Edgerton to the Stow Cultural Council for a 3-year term expiring April 24th, 2021.
Second.
I will take these separately then. Any discussion, any questions? You've seen the materials in the packet regarding this candidate?
Thank you, Jennifer.
Question, they are limited by state law to 2 terms? Is that? That was the implication I had.
But yeah, that's the way it is right now.
Okay.
Done.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous. Now,
I move, next one. I move
Please.
that the Board of Selectmen reappoint Hector Constanzos to the Stow Cultural Council for a 3-year term expiring on April 24th, 2021.
Second.
all right, same thing. Any discussion, comments? All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Hector and Jennifer. The Bicycles Battling Cancer Ride. Again, you have the materials in the packet. It's an extremely well-thought-out plan. Thank you, Detective Sergeant Solis, for working so closely with this candidate. As always, Mr. Salvi, I turn to you for your thoughts and opinions on any kind of a bicycle ride through our town.
Seriously, it goes through one of the toughest intersections in town to bike through, so I'm glad they have a police detail there.
Which one?
The one at Boone.
Gleasondale?
Yeah. Boone and Gleasondale is
So
very, very
they're
difficult.
coming up through the golf course?
They are coming up from, yes, from the
The
golf
Stow
course.
Acres.
Yeah, so it's actually
Yeah.
easier.
Because it's a blind corner,
Right.
high-speed traffic, yep.
A lot of bike rides go through there, and they even go the other way, downhill, and they don't have police details, so this is really good. That is where you need a police detail. Anyway, I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move to approve the use of town public ways for the bicycles battling cancer ride through Stow on Sunday, June 10th, 2018.
Second.
I got a motion and second. Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? And thank you, Detective Solis, Detective Sergeant Solis.
Officer Cush.
Oh, and Officer Cush, too. I'm sorry I missed that.
New safety officer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you to both of them for their hard work and heads up proactive. That brings us to one last thing, which is the special liquor license for the Decibels Foundation Golf Tournament on June 18th that will be held at Wedgewood Pines.
I move to approve and sign a special one-day liquor license for the Decibels Foundation for a golf tournament to be held at the Wedgewood Pines Country Club on Monday, June 18, 2018, between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Second.
Got a motion and second. And Maureen, you'll remind us, they volunteered somebody who would be primary person?
Yes, Bonnie has agreed, who's been in charge of it for many, many years.
Who's that again?
Bonnie Fitzpatrick, she's been the organizer for many years.
So we've got somebody there we can count on. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Okay, I apologize. No nays. Now, liaison reports. Does anyone, well, you know what? I will ask for one liaison report from our administrative assistant about Springfest. I don't think we're going to meet again before Springfest, so maybe you should take a little, how's that
Springfest
going?
is doing well. Springfest is late this year. It's May 19th. So I don't believe it's prom, I don't believe it's Mother's Day weekend, so.
We will.
It isn't, not Mother's Day.
We're not meeting before the 19th?
Will we?
Just the reorg.
Just the
Just the
reorg.
reorg meeting?
We'll do the reorg, yeah.
Okay, so use the bully pulpit advertising.
So I was just down at their meeting tonight. They're very organized. They feel like it's their last push, but they still have a couple good weeks to finish up. Always looking for more volunteers day of, and that can mean just an hour. Doesn't mean you have to volunteer all day at the bouncy houses. Whatever help you would offer, they would take. They have a lot of really great vendors signed on for arts, crafts, local honey. Great band. The band this year, I can't remember the name, but volunteered their time, so it's about $400 we saved and organized. We've been trying to run Springfest on the same amount of money for many years. It's been going well. It keeps getting bigger on the same budget. So 4 new people running it, just wonderful ladies from Stow, and just doing a great job. And all the regular volunteers that have always helped have come back under their reign to help.
Is Sarah the chairman? No?
They haven't really picked anyone
Okay.
as chair.
So
but
shared
Sam
responsibility.
Altieri and Sarah, and everyone knows Sarah, so they seem to be.
Sarah Salamone?
Yep, finding
from next
her,
door.
and,
Yep.
yeah.
Well,
Great.
Well, thank you, and thank you
Doing a
very
great
much for
job.
sticking
Oh,
with
they're doing a
that.
great
I'm
job.
sorry I'm going to be away that weekend with
And
my daughter's
the select-
graduation, but
Oh, the Selectmen's office will always take questions and give out forms, whatever we can do to help organize it.
super, thank you very much.
That's great.
Sure thing.
Does anyone have as worthwhile liaison reports to make that our administrative assistant just did? Salvi?
Capital Planning voted to approve all projects except the Neshoba Phase 2 Energy Management. Just didn't have enough information, got a difficult to understand explanation, just not enough information to support it.
Okay.
I have a question. So I take it we're not meeting on May 8th, even if town meeting only goes one night, Mr. Chairman?
Isn't that our practice?
It's fine with me. It's a great idea. We're all going to be exhausted and sick of each other.
It's going to go 2
I think
nights.
it'll take 2 nights.
It'll go 2 nights.
I do too. I'm just asking just in case.
I thought that we did skip that meeting, but if that's not the case, is it scheduled? Do we have this?
No.
It hasn't been posted yet, but yeah.
No, but I mean, did we, when we pressed the agenda, I mean, the calendar last year, did we put something on for May 8th?
We usually do, yeah.
You mean for the night after, the first night of town meeting, we
No, I'm sorry, 7th and 8th are pre-town, if town meeting goes 2 nights.
Oh, the pre-town is scheduled, but not a
Yes.
regular
No,
meeting.
that goes a week later on a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
No,
goes on a
fine.
Wednesday.
No,
later.
because then we've got the election, then we've got the Wednesday night,
Right.
the reorg.
Then our regular one is like the 22nd.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you want to call for a meeting, just send me an agenda item and I'll think about it.
that. Yeah, I'll think about that.
Oh, there it is.
After tonight?
After
Yeah,
tonight.
it's already scheduled. Okay.
Mr. Hawks?
No, in the interest of time, no.
Mr. Ryan?
One thing I'll give you. We got our new ambulance that we authorized last year. We just got it the other day. They're outfitting it, and they figure it's gonna be on the road in a couple weeks in time for town meeting, so about a year after. But I talked to Chief Landry today, and they went through quite the process to spec it out. They checked many ambulance companies, and then they came up with the specs. They had a 4-man committee, and so they just, then it took, I think about, he said 3 or 4 months just to build it, because they build them all to spec, so.
Good. Ms. Higgins Clark.
No, I think you know all my committees and what they've been doing, so
Well,
no need to report on them. Except I've been a terrible liaison to the recreation committee, so
Well,
I can't report on that.
well, we'll look forward to hearing from you about them in the future then. But I have some matters, but under the press of time, it's not worth going into them. I can do it at another time. So.
Motion
I will
to adjourn.
That came
Second.
quickly.
I'll give it to Don.
All right, motion was made by Mr. Hawks, seconded by Mr. Ryan. All those in favor, unanimous consent. Thank you very much.
Somebody should take